Number 10. NASA's Flying Frog. We'll kick this list off with one of my favorite photos from history ever. On September 13th, 2011, NASA's Leidy spacecraft lifted off from Wallop's flight facility in Virginia. Now, to witness a spacecraft take off and go to space, it's amazing, right? People travel across the country to hopefully catch a glimpse of this experience, right? Now, one frame of this specific launch, one photo here, shows an airborne frog. Just flying, he's spread eagle, just in the air, no idea how he got there. The team behind the launch confirms that this photo is real. Can you imagine what's going through his mind right now during this photo? In fact, what was he doing 5 seconds before this launch was ignited? Just sitting on a throttle booster, eating a fly. He's like, man, what can go wrong? Life, you know? If you ever have the chance to check out a NASA launch, keep your head up. It might rain frogs depending where you are. Number 9. Planet 9. With James Webb in the picture, we're seeing more of our universe now than ever. For a while now, astronomers have been confident about a 9th planet orbiting the sun. Now, this 9th planet is hiding far behind Neptune, so we haven't seen it, obviously. We've been here before, though. It's hard to tell the scale of these things. The largest asteroid in the solar system was discovered back in 1801, and that day it was initially classified as a planet. But just like Pluto, it was, kicked out of the planet party. Get out of here, you're too small for us. Must be this tall to be a planet. Peace. Talk about this 9th planet began in 2014 when American astronomer Dr. Scott Shepard, he found a small dwarf planet candidate called 2012 VP-113. And the orbit of this dwarf planet was too large. It didn't make any sense. Something had to be assisting this colossal spin. For the planet to be acting this way, it would have to be 10 times more massive than our planet here, Earth, and it would take at least 10,000 years to orbit the sun just once. So, Happy New Year, I guess. And considering that it's tucked far behind Neptune, this 9th planet is around 200 times further out than ours. So far, we've covered about 30% of the prime area this planet could be in, and every space fact that I do, I also feel so anxious right after. Holy smokes, space is so scary. Number 8. Bermuda Triangle of Space. Awesome, we love these. If you thought the Bermuda Triangle here on Earth was jarring, buckle up. Turns out they got one in space as well. Awesome, great. I feel the space anxiety in my chest today. A handful of astronauts have experienced this in real life while orbiting our planet. They call it the South Atlantic Anomaly, and it's part of the Earth's magnetic field, and many scientists have connected this triangle to the Van Allen radiation belts. So right above the South Atlantic, when the International Space Station passes through this area, computers often stop working, and astronauts will sometimes experience cosmic flashes in their eyes. That's terrifying. The Hubble has also glitched out when trying to take observations, so what's going on here in this weird triangle? Who knows? Maybe it's the Illuminati that Kanye's talking about. Number 7. Elst Pizarro. This next one is quite bizarro. First discovered in 1979, its orbit in the asteroid belt led to it being classified initially as an asteroid. Yet when it was examined more closely in 1996, it showed itself to have a tail like a comet. We love an evolving space rock, I guess. Keep changing, keep confusing us, sure. One possibility, maybe, there was a collision at some point and that crash ended up exposing some subsurface ice on the body, which is slowly now being lost to space. So now it's whipping by, which explains the new tail. Elst Pizarro was an asteroid and then a comet, and then once its layers have melted off, now it could be just a plain old boring asteroid. Again, we're not too sure here. Elst Pizarro got the zoomies for a hot minute, but we're not sure why. Experts had hoped to launch the Castalia spacecraft in 2028 to get a better look, but since 2016 the European Space Agency hasn't had any funding to give this project the green light, so we'll never know probably. Awesome. What's Elon doing? Can we send him up? Take a look. Number 6. Scotland Fireball. What's believed to be space junk belonging to Elon Musk, this fireball seen crashing down over Scotland and Northern Ireland has experts scratching their heads. The fireball was visible for 20 seconds around 10 p.m. on September 14th. Reminder, this was only a couple of months ago, so you might remember it. There were around 1,200 reports on the ball, including 10 videos. The UK Meteor Network wrote on Twitter the next day stating, quote, "We have checked the Starlink deorbit and it would have not have come anywhere near the UK. At this point we cannot find any known space junk or satellite deorbit that could account for this fireball. We are looking at the data again." End quote. This lasted 20 seconds, where a meteor would be much, much shorter. Any theories as to what this was? I know a lot of our viewers live around this area, so comment down below if you witnessed Optimus Prime's arrival 2 months ago. Number 5. Michigan Lights. If you're a fan of the series Unsolved Mysteries over on Netflix, this next one here should ring a familiar bell. March 8th, 1994, more than 300 911 calls were made, all of which were reporting strange lights in the night sky right along the eastern shore of Lake Michigan. That is way too close to our home right now. That's terrifying. I was born in 1994 as well, so who knows? Maybe I was dropped off by aliens. These objects, these UFOs in question, were described as round like discs, or they were like floating spheres. Both jarring descriptions. They all had different colored lights as well, so planes are obviously out of the question. It's been so long now that the case has finally found its way to Netflix, so no, it is still not solved. Number 4. Steve. Nice. An unexplainable light in the sky named Steve. This sounds Canadian already. Back in 2018, this mystery came to light. There's a light in the sky in Canada, and scientists still have no idea what it is. All they know is that they call it Steve. Steve is short for strong thermal emission velocity enhancement. Now, Steve's appearance, I can't lie, he is beautiful. He's gorgeous to look at. Steve looks like a white purplish ribbon that stretches throughout the sky, almost like the northern lights, only scientists are sure that Steve is not an aurora. It's very hot and it doesn't last long. Classic Steve, doesn't last long, eh? Must be Canadian. Number 3, Hodge's meteorite. Now these meteorites, they can happen pretty often, but luckily most of the time it doesn't wipe out everybody and everything. That's pretty good. Sorry dinosaurs, thanks for taking one for the team for us. Back in 1954, residents in Talladega County, Alabama, noticed a ball of fire heading towards them. Now, we didn't have Twitter, we couldn't warn people that maybe a meteor was about to hit and wipe us out forever, and we also didn't really know how to tell if meteorites were coming and how scary it was, so it was alarming. Especially for Anne Elizabeth Hodges, who got hit by that said space rock. Yeah, that ball of fire that we always see going through the sky, that hit her. It grazed her hip. Now you may be asking, was she outside stargazing at this point? Was she doing some cosmic ritual? No, she was napping in her living room, and then an 8-pound chunk of meteorite smashed through her roof and again, only grazed her hip. She got grazed by a meteorite and then received a bruise. First human to ever get hit by a meteorite, and probably the last. What a flex that is. Imagine putting that on Tinder. Number 2, go fast. Okay, a bit more modern now. This one was trending recently, but it was originally recorded back in 2015. It was part of that big alien leak that we got to witness over the pandemic. That was fun. That was just what we needed. Middle of a pandemic, the news is like, hey, check out these UFOs also. We don't know. Good luck. Now what you're seeing here is an FA-18 Super Hornet following a UAP. Now we don't call them UFOs anymore because that's so M. Night Shyamalan, alright? We don't do that. We call them UAPs. Also sounds a little smarter. US Navy personnel caught this UAP flying along the east coast, and there was no exhaust, there was no wings, just a really fast sphere, almost like I mentioned earlier. A 45-foot long egg, 25,000 feet above the Atlantic, just whipping, and it flew away and nobody saw it ever since. Do we think UFOs are balls like spheres? I think that's the new thing. We went from discs to spheres. Finally, number 1, Uranus tilts. Jokes aside, and you best believe I had about 20 ready, we're still trying to figure out why Uranus rotates on its side, when every other planet has their axis pointing upwards, right? Uranus's tilt is 98 degrees, so there's long periods of time, like 40 years long, where the North or South Pole will just face the sun directly. It'll just grill the sun for 40 years straight. Perfect place to get your tan on. The other pole, not so much. You're gonna be pale for 40 years, like my dad. Other planets in our solar system, they have a prograde rotation. Now Venus, that has a retrograde rotation. But why? What's going on here? So far, our leading theory is that something massive may have hit these planets many, many moons ago, early in their planet life. Scientists believe that Uranus was hit by a meteor and completely threw it off course. Gotta be careful. Gotta watch Uranus, right? Hit that thumbs up for Uranus.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have radiation-proof bacteria. In 2002, Russian astrobiologists hypothesized that a bacteria here on Earth may have actually evolved on Mars. Deinococcus radioduranis is the most tough bacteria on Earth. It can withstand even the most extreme conditions such as cold, dehydration, vacuum, and acid, but the craziest part is that it is virtually radiation-proof. These little microbes microbes can withstand several thousand times the amount of radiation a human can withstand, as well as more radiation than any other bacteria on Earth. You can even find this bacteria on the inside of a nuclear reactor. Scientists did an experiment to see how quickly this bacteria could build up a stronger radiation resistance by zapping the bacteria with enough radiation to kill 99.9% of it, and then leaving the remaining 0.01% to repopulate before zapping it again and repeating the process. It was concluded that it would have taken E. coli thousands and thousands of rounds to build up the same resistance that this hardy bacteria did in only 44 rounds. With this experiment, and based on the dose of radiation they gave each bacteria, it would take millions and millions of years to get even close to that amount of radiation they gave the bacteria in one cycle. Since Earth just doesn't carry that amount of radiation, it has led some scientists to speculate that since Mars is virtually unprotected and receives extremely high amounts of radiation, these bacteria may have evolved on Mars and gained their resistance in just a few 100,000 years, and that they may have been flung off of Mars by an asteroid and then brought to Earth on meteorites. It certainly is just a hypothesis at this point, but really, how else can we explain this random super-powered bacteria that is unlike anything else on our Earth? In our number 9 spot today, we have the USS Princeton UFO. What's a space list without the mention of a UFO sighting? This one took place in 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this, the crew had been tracking a strange flying object that would start out at around 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Black Aces Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate of Strike Fighter Squadron 41 went over in 2 fighter jets in order to kind of scope out the situation, and when they arrived, they saw what at first appeared to be churning water, while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, a white oval-shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like, we're talking no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. Like, when I say quickly, I mean it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of the fighter jets. Like some Top Gun Maverick stuff. So faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what this was, but I'll tell you one thing. We definitely don't have that kind of technology. In our number 8 spot today, we have the USO. UFO to USO. Daryl Miklos is an explorer who took a deep dive following maps that had been put together by his friend and former astronaut Gordon Cooper. The map Daryl was using was initially made to help identify more than 100 magnetic anomalies in the sea. During one dive at a location within the Bermuda Triangle, where everything weird happens, he thought he was going to find an ancient shipwreck, but instead he found something that continues to stump researchers and Daryl himself. He came across a very strange structure that wasn't like anything he had seen before. This structure had long obtrusions which stuck out from the sides, and the whole thing was covered in coral, so whatever it is, it has been down there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Daryl has said, quote, "There's identical formations in 3 different areas, and they don't look nature-made, they don't look man-made. Certainly nothing I've ever seen based on my experience, and I have years of experience at doing this. We've identified multiple different types of shipwreck material. This doesn't match or look anything like that." People have started speculating that this structure may just be the remains of a crashed UFO. If it isn't that, then what else could it be? In our number 7 spot today, we have the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an extremely mysterious discovery that has stumped researchers ever since it was found. This artifact was found 150 feet below the surface of the Aegean Sea in a shipwreck, and it is the oldest kind of computer ever recorded, as it was dated back to the 7th century BCE. The author David Childress likened the finding to if they had found a jet plane in King Tut's tomb. That's how bizarre this discovery really was. Due to the complexity and oddity of the finding, alien enthusiasts have believed for quite some time that it may have been technology that was passed down from some sort of superior being, so aliens. When the artifact was recreated in order to learn about the mysteries it holds, the mechanism was able to calculate the position and running time of each planet. How would they have been able to create this without the use of sophisticated astronomical tools? I'm not saying that this is like concrete proof of alien life, but I don't know. There's just gotta be something else at play here. In our number 6 spot today we have fossilized microbes. This is a piece of evidence that came from 1996 and it is said to have come all the way from Mars. 25 years ago, scientists said that they had potentially found what appeared to be fossilized microbes in a lump of Martian rock. This rock was hypothesized to have come off of Mars after some sort of collision that the planet had and then just casually floated around in space for some 15 million years before it ended up in Antarctica in 1984. You know, just the kind of thing that happens in space. Once the rock was found and analyzed, it was found that it contained organic molecules and small specks of mineralized magnetite, which can sometimes be found in the bacteria here on Earth. Once viewed with an electron microscope, there were signs of bacteria found. Of course, with anything like this, there will always be skeptics, and some have claimed that the magnetite wasn't that similar to those found in bacteria, and some claim that the signs of nanobacteria were just grown in a lab. I'm not a scientist, nor have I seen this Mars rock, so I obviously can't tell you who is telling the truth here, but what I can say is that neither of the people who believe this rock came from Mars, or those who claim that it's fake, can prove their point without any kind of doubt, so I'll just let you draw your own conclusions on this one. In our number 5 spot today we have quark gluon plasma. So basically, scientists believe that right after the Big Bang there was this sort of really hot, goopy kind of a substance that was created, and it was made up of all different kinds of matter. Everything is moving around at the speed of light, it's hot, it's fast, and it's like cosmic soup. Okay, so experts at the Large Hadron Collider, which is the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator, wanted to recreate this space soup. You know, part of the whole trying to solve the mysteries of the universe's origins kind of thing. When they did this and got the machine to recreate this, they ended up recording the highest temperature ever. Apparently this soup was measured at 9.9 trillion degrees Fahrenheit. We obviously can all understand that that is insanely hot, but just how hot? Well, that is 366,000 times hotter than the center of the sun. In our number 4 spot today we have energetic cosmic rays. Energetic cosmic rays are described as high energy protons and atomic nuclei that move through space at nearly the speed of light. There are some that originate from supernova, but there are some that originate from outside of our galaxy, and those ones have scientists wondering where they are coming from and what the source of them is. As these cosmic rays flow into our solar system, their paths are bent by the magnetic fields of both the sun and the Earth. Upon impact with Earth's atmosphere, these rays produce a shower of secondary particles. Some of these particles do end up reaching Earth, but most are intercepted by either the magnetosphere or the heliosphere. The strongest cosmic rays are extremely powerful, and they can have energies of over 100 million times greater than a man-made collider. If you're wondering why you should care about this space mystery, it's because these things have the power to cause our digital systems to crash, and in our ever-increasing digital world, that could cause some major disruptions to our life. That is why we care about how many of their origins remain a complete mystery that has scientists stumped. And also, because shouldn't we just know where these things that are bombarding Earth's atmosphere are coming from? Concerning is definitely the word I'd use, but honestly, what part of space isn't concerning? In our number 3 spot today we have Elst Pizarro. This is a weird little object that has been stumping scientists since it was first discovered in 1979. So basically, asteroids and comets tend to be fairly easy to tell apart. I mean, an asteroid is a solid lump of rock and metal, and you tend to find them more in the inner solar system, especially in the asteroid belt. And on the other hand, we have comets, which are usually more icy objects that travel from the outer areas of the solar system, and sometimes when they react with the solar radiation, they have those famous tails. So when Elst Pizarro was first discovered, it was orbiting in the asteroid belt, so it was classified as an asteroid. Flash forward to 1996 and closer examination shows that it had a tail. like a comet. At first, experts thought that perhaps the tail was a result of some sort of collision, which is not uncommon for asteroids, but when the brightness and structure of the tail changed over time, it became clear that it was more of an ongoing process. Basically, this object showed signs and trademarks of both asteroids and comets, and it truly was a baffling discovery. Basically, the discovery of this object led to an entirely new classification: active asteroids. In our number 2 spot today, we have the fastest black hole. The biggest black hole that we have found so far is said to weigh about 40 billion times the mass of our sun, or about 20 times the size of our solar system. That's so scary. That's so big! Some of the outer, slowest orbiting planets in our solar system, like let's take Neptune as an example, orbits at a speed of about 165 Earth years. This huge black hole, the one that's 20 times the size of our solar system, yet it orbits once every 3 months. Do you know how fast that is? Neptune is considered slow at going 12,148 miles per hour. The outer edge of this black hole is moving at half the speed of light. The crazy thing about black holes this large though, other than how fast they're moving apparently, is that it is believed that they wouldn't necessarily kill you right away if you were to fall into one. In fact, it's thought that you would actually survive. You just wouldn't be able to escape to tell the tale because of that whole nothing escapes the black hole thing that they all have going on. In our number 1 spot today, we have supermassive black holes. Speaking of black holes, why is there a supermassive black hole at the center of most galaxies? We know that this is often the case, but we just can't quite figure out why. Every galaxy's supermassive black hole ranges in size, and we know that a stellar black hole forms from a supernova when the core of the star implodes, but we don't know how a supermassive black hole is formed. Because of the fact that the center of galaxies is where a lot of matter is boxed in, it could happen that supermassive black holes form from a cluster of regular stellar black holes, which all ended up merging together because they were in a tight confined space at the center of the galaxy. There are other theories as well, such as the possibility of these supermassive black holes being formed during the Big Bang. What I'm trying to get at is, we don't know how these things are formed, or why they are in the center of most galaxies, or even if there were supermassive black holes before the galaxies even existed. Maybe one day we'll find out, but this might just be one of those mysteries that is destined to stay a secret. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Dragonfly 44. This is what is called an ultra-diffuse galaxy, and it is located in the Gamma cluster. This galaxy is of concern because of some interesting observations that were made in relation to it back in 2016. Basically, this galaxy was first discovered because of the influence it is having on our Milky Way galaxy. Astronomers noticed some strange sort of ripples in our galaxy and subsequently realized that this was due to the pull of Dragonfly 44's gravity as it orbited around our own. Of course, once it was realized that this galaxy was the culprit, experts started looking into the galaxy more, and that is when it was realized that this galaxy is actually quite dark. In fact, we can only really see this galaxy due to 4 bright stars that shine out of the otherwise dark, gloomy galaxy. This has led to the hypothesis that this galaxy must be largely made of dark matter. This is extremely interesting because not only is dark matter one of the most pressing mysteries of space, but this galaxy was found to be made up of 99.99% dark matter. Some even say that this galaxy shouldn't even really be able to hold itself together with so few stars. This is all to say that this galaxy is extremely interesting, and with further investigation and research, it may just be the key that helps us understand what in the world dark matter really is and what it's made of. In our number 9 spot today, we have cosmic disappearance. Some sort of unidentified thing that is larger than anything in our known universe is sucking portions of the Milky Way away. I know, it's terrifying, and it definitely is concerning, considering it's the place that we all call home. This discovery came in 2009 when researchers first found a cluster of galaxies moving at extremely fast speed towards a small area of sky. This area is located between the constellations of Centaurus and Vela, and whatever this whole thing is, it has experts completely stumped as to what it could be. For now, it remains a space mystery that has been dubbed Dark Flow, so that it can sit on the shelf with the other terrifying space mysteries like dark energy and dark matter, whatever those are. In our number 8 spot today, we have Tycho. This is what is being called a zombie star. This frightened fitting name comes from the fact that this star was once a white dwarf, which is basically what is left over after a star exploded, but its mass was not enough to become a neutron star or a black hole. What's different about these zombie stars, however, is that they have gobbled up a bunch of mass from another nearby star, which then leads to them exploding all over again in what is called a Type 1a supernova. These blasts are insanely luminous and bright. Some even say that they have the light of 1 billion suns. This is all to say that they are insanely interesting objects and events that exist in the universe, and they are also thought to be helping scientists study what the heck dark energy is. In our number 7 spot today we have Oumuamua. A few years ago, scientists all agreed that we had found an object that was flying through our solar system, and they called it Oumuamua, and it was widely agreed that it was an interstellar comet that had swung out from around another star. Upon closer examination, however, they realized that something was propelling it and causing it to accelerate, and this is when the debate started because they just don't really know why. Avi Loeb, who's a Harvard University astrophysicist, proposed the idea that rather than a comet, this could be an alien probe that is being pushed by a light sail, which is a very wide but extremely thin piece of material that accelerates by being pushed by solar radiation. Other scientists didn't agree with this and instead said that it's possible that hydrogen ice could have melted off of the object in a way that would mimic a rocket engine or something of that nature. Avi then wrote in a study that hydrogen ice is too easily heated and it would have melted off long before it reached our solar system. I guess all in all, we just have to wait it out while the scientists debate and gather more evidence to really know what is going on behind this one. In our number 6 spot today we have the wandering moon. The moon is apparently slowly, sadly, moving away from Earth. When I say slowly, I mean slowly, as it's at a rate of about half an inch a year, but still, when we're talking about our cosmic best buddy, the moon isn't only the thing that lights up our night sky. The moon plays a vital role to our lives here on Earth due to its great companionship and its gravitational pull. The moon's gravity is what causes the tides of our ocean, so without our moon, who knows what would happen to our marine ecosystems. The moon is also responsible for the axial tilt of Earth and how it stays in relatively the same place. Without the moon, we either wouldn't have any tilt at all, or we would be tilted all the way. This would mean that we would either have no seasons, or some of the most extreme seasons any of us have ever seen. While it doesn't appear the moon is going anywhere soon, sometimes we just have to keep an eye on her to make sure. In our number 5 spot today we have the mysterious gap. Basically, a new analysis by scientists at MIT of ancient meteorites found something new and super interesting. In the early solar system, there was what is referred to as a protoplanetary disk of dust and gas that rotated around the sun, and eventually it coalesced into the planets that we know and love today. So this new study and analysis suggests that this sort of mysterious gap existed within this disk somewhere around, I don't know, 4.567 billion years ago, and it was in an area near where the asteroid belt is today. The reason this gap is mysterious is because it isn't quite clear what the cause of this gap was. There are a few possibilities, including Jupiter, during the time when it began to take its shape. Because of its extremely large gravitational pull, it could have pushed gas and dust towards the outskirts, which then would leave a gap in the developing disk. There are other possibilities, but regardless of whatever caused this gap, it is said to have likely served as a cosmic boundary that kept material on either side from interacting with each other. In our number 4 spot today we have a blitzar. So normally when stellar black holes are formed, they're the result of a large star exploding into a supernova. This then has the core normally collapsing into either a neutron star or a black hole. Blitzars are a hypothetical type of neutron star where they spin so fast that if they slow down, they'll collapse right into a black hole. I do understand that they are theoretical at this point, but some researchers believe that these stars might be an explanation for fast radio bursts should we find that they in fact do exist. In January of 2015, there were 7 different events that experts thought could be attributed to blitzars, but it is thought that they actually might occur once every 10 seconds in our observable universe. The magnetic field around a blitzar would clear anything prior to it turning into a black hole, which means that no nearby material would fall in upon the initial collapse, which means that there is no burst of gamma rays or X-rays, which is usually seen when other black holes form, and this is exactly why, if they do exist, they are hard to detect. Should we come to find concrete evidence of their existence, these guys would prove incredibly valuable insight into the formation of black holes. In our number 3 spot today we have Hoag's object. Okay, so there are different shapes to galaxies. That's not the weirdest thing in the world. You know, we live in a spiral shaped one, it's beautiful. There are other galaxies called ellipticals that are more like oval shaped, but one galaxy in particular, which is now called Hoag's object, is truly like none we've ever seen. This galaxy has a yellow core, and this core is surrounded by an outer ring of blue stars that are much younger than the core, but in the middle between the two, there's just nothing, and researchers are completely stumped as to how this could have formed. The galaxy was first discovered in the 1950s, and since then, there is one leading theory as to how it could have been formed, but it still isn't concrete. Basically, this leading theory suggests that perhaps a small galaxy sped through a larger disc-shaped galaxy, which then created this bizarre situation, but the problem with this theory is that there are no signs of any nearby galaxies that could have served as this sort of bullet in this scenario. If that happened, it also would have sped up the core of Hoag's object, but we can observe it as moving quite slowly, so that also rules out this theory. There have been other galaxies discovered that have some similar characteristics to this one, but none share all of the qualities seen in this very bizarre galaxy. In our number 2 spot today we have Haumea. Back in 2017, this dwarf planet passed between Earth and a distant star, which allowed scientists to get a better look at it, and thus they were able to discover some new findings. Haumea sits in an area beyond Neptune that is called the Kuiper Belt, and it is actually one of the largest objects inside of the belt. Before the new discoveries in 2017, we already knew that this dwarf planet was weird. I mean, it has kind of a weird elongated shape, it has 2 moons, and its day only lasts 4 hours, which means that it's the fastest spinning large object in our entire solar system. It is thought that its fast spin might be responsible for its weird shape, but either way, scientists were quite surprised in 2017 when they realized that this strange planet actually has rings. This means that Haumea likely had some sort of collision, and probably not too long ago, relatively speaking. This collision likely happened somewhere from 1 billion to several hundred million years ago, but the search for the origins of these rings brings a whole new mystery to the dwarf planet. In our number 1 spot today we have magnetars. These space things are actually a type of neutron star, but what makes them different is that they have this insanely powerful magnetic field. Like, we are talking 1,000 times stronger than a regular neutron star, or about 1 trillion times stronger than the magnetic field that Earth has. That means that these type of stars would have enough magnetic power to wipe every credit card on Earth, even from a distance halfway to the moon. They're the most magnetic stars in the entire universe. This is all very cool and interesting, but it's also important to note that if you were to venture within about 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers of one of these stars, you would die very quickly. The magnetic field would destroy your body. It would tear electrons from your atoms, which would then basically turn you into a cloud of monotonic ions, or single atoms without electrons. This is all to say that next to black holes, these are one of the most bizarre objects in the entire universe.
Number 10. The Hands Resist Him. The Hands Resist Him is a painting by Bill Stoneham. It's also known as the Haunted eBay painting, and I can't say that I disagree. The painting is based on a real-life photograph of the artist from around the time he was 5 years old. The painting depicts a young boy and doll in front of a glass door, with disembodied hands in the background. A California couple found the painting in an abandoned brewery, but in February 2000, not long after they brought it to their home, they've listed it on eBay with a warning to buyers. It said, "This painting may or may not possess supernatural powers that could impact or change your life." Now, let me just say, if something you're thinking about buying comes with a warning like that, I'd suggest not buying it. The couple claimed their daughter told them that the boy and girl from the painting would fight with each other at night. The ad also mentioned that at one point the boy seemingly exited the picture, which is why they decided to sell. I'm sorry, this just gives me the goosebumps. It sold for $1,025 to Kim Smith, a gallery owner from Michigan. In an interview, she revealed that she's received emails from people who claim they were repulsed or became physically ill by just viewing a photo of the painting. My suggestion, burn it with fire right now. Number 9. The Bazzano Vase. Legend has it that this silver vase made in the 15th century was given to a bride on the evening of her wedding near Naples, Italy. Sadly, she'd never make it to the altar as her life was ended that very night with the vase in her hands. From there, the vase was passed down her family line, but anyone who took possession of it is said to have passed away soon thereafter, so the family eventually made the decision to hide the vase. Which sounds like a great idea, but in 1988, the vase resurfaced, supposedly accompanied by a note that read, "Beware, this vase brings death." However, when the Pisano vase was auctioned off for about $2,250, the note had been excluded from the item description, which I feel like was important to include, but whatever. The pharmacist who bought it died within 3 months. More deaths of new owners followed, until finally the curse seemed to go dormant when a desperate family demanded the police take the vase away, and it has not been seen since. Now, wherever it is today, it should stay there and never come out. Number 8. Nightmare Doll. The doll may look like any other, but according to the seller, it's a debuk. A debuk is a term from Jewish folklore that describes a dead person's soul that is stuck in purgatory. Supposedly, it can inhabit an object or the body of a living person. In this case, it's a doll. The seller, who specializes in selling paranormal items that people don't want anymore, says the doll's owner brought it to an antique shop and was told it was a debuk, but didn't know what the word meant. I feel like if you're buying something haunted, you should do your research on it, but maybe that's just me. Soon after, whenever she would open the box it came in or touch the doll, she would suffer from terrifying nightmares of shadow people. This continued for several months until her son took the doll from her to sell it. It sold for $17.49, and I want to know who just ruined their life for $17.49. Number 7. The Bronze Lady. Many people go into Sleepy Hollow in search of its best known spirit, the Headless Horseman. However, they may not be aware of a second local legend which has haunted the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery for over 100 years, the Bronze Lady. She's a bronze statue located in New York's Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. The Bronze Lady was commissioned by the widow of Civil War General Samuel M. Thomas after he died in 1903. The story goes Samuel's widow was unhappy with the statue because its expression seemed gloomy, so sculptor Andrew O'Connor Jr. redid it for her. But instead of just handing over the new head, he called it a monstrosity and shattered it in front of her. Now, much to her dismay, she installed the original figure to watch over her late husband's tomb anyway. And in the following years, nighttime visitors to the cemetery claimed to have heard quiet sobs coming from the Bronze Lady. It was said if you knocked on the door of the general's tomb and looked through the keyhole, you would have a bad dream that night. There was another one where if you slapped her in the face, sat in her lap, and spit in her eye, she would haunt you for the rest of your life. Yeah, I just stay away from there. Number 6. James Dean's car. On September 23rd, 1955, James Dean ran into Sir Alec Guinness at a restaurant and showed off his Porsche 550 Spider. In his autobiography, Sir Alec described the car as sinister, and he told Dean, "Please never get in it. If you get in that car, you will be found dead in it by this time next week." 7 days later, Dean was found dead after crashing the car. Now, the trouble didn't stop there. Surgeon/recreational racer Dr. William F. Esrich rescued some of the Porsche's parts from a junkyard and passed a few to his friend Dr. Troy McHenry. They installed parts in their own cars and then both crashed during a race in October 1956. William survived, but Troy didn't, and whispers of a curse began to spread. The rest of the car went to George Barris, the car customizer. Over the next several years, the Spider supposedly caused a handful of incidents. A garage caught fire while the car was inside, 2 tires blew out while affixed to a different vehicle, and a couple of thieves were injured when trying to steal some of the Spider's remaining parts. George claimed that the car had mysteriously vanished in 1960, and the car has been MIA since. Seems cursed to me though, I wouldn't want to go anywhere near it. Number 5. Baker's wedding dress. In 1854, while visiting her father's company, Anna Baker met and fell in love with one of the steelworkers. Anna kept the romance a secret from her family as she knew her father would prohibit her relationship with one of his employees. This went on for 2 years, and it wasn't long after Anna's boyfriend proposed and she happily accepted. Anna picked out a beautiful wedding dress and the two made plans to marry, but her father found out about the secret relationship and immediately fired Anna's love, threatening him with death if he ever returned. Anna's heart broke and she fell into a deep depression. The only thing she had was the wedding dress. Her house was then turned into a museum with the dress displayed. Now, most of the paranormal activity in the home appears to be centered around the dress. Visitors have witnessed the glass case move while they were in the room, appearing as if someone was trying to get the dress. Others have claimed to see the dress move or have caught glimpses of what appeared to be the dress out of its case floating around. Number 4. Destructive Statue. The destructive statue was auctioned in October 2013. It was made by a man named William who enjoyed making sculptures out of unhardened clay. I'm sorry, but this statue just makes me feel uneasy, and according to the item's description, William made this particular statue on the same day he was crushed to death during a tragic work incident at the brickyard. Which is ironic because the statue has the word future carved into it, but William never really had a future after making it. Too dark. Moving on. A coworker saw that the statue was still at the job site when he arrived the next day, so he took it home with him like any reasonable person would do. While nothing strange happened for a few months, things took a turn when he took it out of storage to display in his den. A few days later, the den felt heavy and uninviting. He began hearing doors slam on their own, only to find them wide open. Decorations that were next to the statue shattered on their own, and at one point he found the statue facing the other side of the wall, even though he had never moved it. To make matters worse, he then saw a dark shadow or mist as he was walking past the den one night. Completely spooked, he begged his friend to sell it for him, who then put it on eBay. It's so funny that he was so scared to deal with it, he's pawning it off to some other poor soul who will unknowingly experience the exact same thing. Number 3. The Conjure Chest. The Conjure, or the Conjured Chest, is a chest of drawers who has taken the lives of about 16 people. As the story goes, an enslaved man named Remus custom made the item for his enslaver. Jeremiah, displeased with Remus's work, beat him to death. In retaliation, Remus's friends then cursed the chest by scattering dried owl blood in its drawers, and let me just say, those are great friends. But the Grahams used the chest and passed it down their family for 140 years, and death or injury came to anyone who stored their apparel inside. In the mid-20th century, Virginia Carey Hudson Cleveland had 2 of her offspring die, and her husband died after being rushed to the hospital for appendicitis. A neighbor also died after an incident involving a weapon, and all have used the chest. So Virginia enlisted the help of her maid, Sally, to undo the curse. They followed the steps that included curing a dead owl and boiling willow leaves. Sally said that if she or Virginia then died, it would prove that the curse had been broken, and months later, Sally did die. When Virginia's daughter inherited the chest, she opted not to use it, which is why she's the smartest person in that family. Number 2. Robert the Doll. Before there was Annabelle, there was Robert, which is even more terrifying. The 40-inch tall nightmare was created by the German toy company Steiff. In Key West, Florida in 1904, the doll was given to 4-year-old Robert Eugene Otto, who went by Gene. Some reports say it was a present from Gene's grandfather, while others suggested the disgruntled maid of the Ottos cursed the doll before giving it to their young son. It's also possible that the maid cursed the doll sometime after Gene's grandfather gave it to him. Either way, this doll was bad news. Robert the Doll, dressed in a sailor suit of Gene, quickly became his owner's evil alter ego. As legend would have it, whenever Gene's parents would find his bedroom furniture upended or his toys mangled, Gene would say, "Robert did it." Gene grew up, became an artist, got married, and then returned to his childhood house. Gene's wife, Anne, wasn't a huge fan of Robert the Doll, shocking, so Gene set up a new area for him in the attic. Passerbys claimed that Robert would switch positions without any help and would watch them from the window while they walked by. People who actually set foot in the house reported hearing footsteps and laughter in the attic. This activity continued after Gene's death in 1970, when the estate, Robert included, passed into the hands of one Myrtle Reuter. And coming in at number 1 is the Devil's Chair. This story goes like this. Lorraine and Ed Warren helped exorcise a possessed boy named David Glatzel in the early 80s. During his exorcisms, this chair would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. Witnesses say the final exorcism concluded when the demon fled David's body and entered Arnie Cheyenne Johnson, a man who ended the life of his landlord months later during an argument and claimed it was due to demonic possession. Now, if this sounds familiar, it is. This story is the inspiration for the 3rd Conjuring film. Now, Ghost Adventure star Zach Bagans purchased the chair to be on display in his museum, but he had been forced to shut down his haunted rocking chair exhibit. While Zach and a friend noticed the door to the chair's room slowly creak open all by itself, Zach also said a light focused on the chair went out out when a power cord was mysteriously yanked out of the wall. 2 hours later, he says a woman collapsed, began bawling, and asked, "Why is this happening to me?" Shortly thereafter, she fell unconscious, according to Zach, who adds the woman was upstairs, directly above the rocking chair exhibit. Later, Zach said 5 of his tour guides throughout the museum started crying uncontrollably. After just a few tours on opening night, the stress was too much for Zach, and it forced him to shut it down altogether for the night. For now, Zach says the haunting rocking chair exhibit is closed until further notice. But in the middle of 2022, YouTubers Sam and Kobe, who are paranormal investigators, that I love by the way, were given special permission to not only see or touch the chair, but to sit in it. The results were insane, and they are braver than me.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Anna Baker's wedding dress. In 1836, a man named Elias Baker purchased a mansion in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and moved his small family in. Elias's oldest daughter was named Anna, and when she fell in love with a steel worker, things took a very dark turn. Anna's father didn't want her dating this man, but she kept doing it in secret. The story goes that Anna and the man planned a secret wedding and they were going to elope. Unfortunately, Elias found out and freaked out. He apparently purchased the steel mill that this man worked for and then forced him to have to move to an entirely different city so as to prevent him from being able to continue seeing Anna. Anna of course was furious with her father, and I'm sure this was only made worse by his decision to offer other men to her, to which she of course declined because that's just weird. Anna instead locked herself in her room with her wedding dress that she never got to wear. Anna unfortunately never married after that and spent the rest of her life being terribly upset about the whole incident. After her death, it is said that her anger and despair ended up going into the wedding dress. Members of the Baker family reported seeing the dress in different places around the house despite no one moving it themselves. Some have even reported seeing Anna's spirit dressed in the gown around the house as well. In our number 9 spot today, we have The Hands Resist Him. The Hands Resist Him is a painting created by artist Bill Stoneham, and it is supposed to represent the doorway that connects our world with the world of the spirits. The doorway to the other side. This is extra suspicious considering owners of the painting have claimed that they have seen the characters in the painting move, or sometimes even disappear at night. The painting is said to depict Bill as a child looking quite sad with a doll with creepy hollow eyes. In the background you can see mysterious hands reaching out towards the boy. The creepiness of the painting is only elevated when we hear the stories of the reported 3 people who passed away after coming into contact with the painting. It ended up kind of disappearing for around 15 years until it popped back up on eBay. Even then, the seller warned potential buyers that the painting was haunted and claimed that the boy in the painting would come out of it and scare their child. The painting ended up being sold for $1,025 to a buyer in Michigan, and at this point it's unclear if they've had any troubles with the rumored hauntings and curses. In our number 8 spot today, we have the cursed phone number. I didn't know a phone number could be cursed, but apparently it's true, and I know a phone number technically isn't an object, but I still feel like this had to be included today because it's just too crazy to not. There was a Bulgarian phone number that is said to have been in use for 10 years before it was closed. The reason why it ended up being closed and put out of use is because it is rumored to have belonged to 3 separate people who all died of mysterious circumstances after having been assigned the phone number. Apparently all of the deaths took place shortly after the person had been assigned the number, and they were all seemingly a bit suspicious, thus the rumors of the cursed telephone number began to spread. After this, the company made the decision to suspend the phone number, and they didn't give out details as to why. I wonder if the two are related. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Belcourt Castle chairs. Belcourt Castle is located in Newport, Rhode Island, and it is a former summer cottage. Construction on the cottage started in 1891, with it being completed in 1894, and inside there is a ballroom. The ballroom is important because it is said that it holds a group of haunted chairs. People who have visited the castle have reported a ton of strange happenings regarding this specific set of chairs. The reports include things like feeling chills racing up and down their spines, or feeling a strange sensation in a shift of energy while standing near the chairs, and some people have even explained how they have been pushed out of the chairs by an invisible force. I feel like just hearing stories might be enough to explain the energy shift some people are feeling, but actually being pushed out of a chair by some sort of invisible force would be absolutely terrifying. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Anguished Man. While it is unknown who or when it was created, this painting is said to carry some kind of a curse. It is rumored that whoever created it mixed his blood with the oil paint, and when he finished creating it, he ended up taking his own life. When a woman who is referred to as Mrs. Robinson originally took possession of the painting after it was given to her by a family friend, she immediately knew that something was wrong with it. She ended up passing it along to her grandson Sean, who currently still owns the painting. When Sean hung the painting up, they apparently started experiencing paranormal events. The Robinson family has reported many different strange events that have happened in relation to the painting, such as hearing screams and groans coming from it, as well as hearing doors creaking when no one is around them, and being awoken in the middle of the night by blood-curdling screams that they can't find the source of. Sean has even uploaded videos to YouTube where he shows these paranormal events, and it has been reported that the family now keeps the painting hidden away in the basement, which is probably for the best. In our number 5 spot today we have the Dark Mirror. This mirror now resides within the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, and just that alone is enough to know it deserves a spot on today's list. The museum received this mirror from the owner who had purchased it from a psychic fair. It is believed that this mirror was created sometime around the 1820s or 30s, and it is actually quite beautiful to look at despite the sinister things it seems to hold. The owner who gave it to the museum explained that every time they peered into the mirror, they saw these extremely upsetting things while looking into the dark mirror's reflection. The museum has said that since they added the mirror to their collection, there have been guests who have also reported the same kind of things. Guests have claimed to see things reflected back at them like sightings of their own corpse. In our number 4 spot today we have Old Nick. Old Nick is often referred to as the Swansea Devil, and his story dates back to the 1890s, although he now resides in the Swansea Museum. So, back in the 1890s, there was the prestigious St. Mary's Church located right in the center of town. The church decided to do some renovations and they put out some ads to hire someone. When a local builder applied for the job and was turned down, he had a major overreaction and decided he wanted to get some kind of revenge. He went and bought the row of cottages that lay next to the church and then demolished them all. In their place, he built large brick offices and then commissioned the carving of Old Nick and placed him right on top of the office building, looking down at St. Mary's Church. Legend goes that he even placed the curse himself by saying, quote, "When your church is destroyed and burnt to the ground, my devil will remain laughing," end quote. Some years later, during World War II, a German blitz came through the town and it left most of it, including St. Mary's, completely destroyed and burnt to the ground. But the office building with Old Nick was undamaged and remained standing. For a while, Old Nick seemed to kind of disappear, but once he resurfaced, there was a petition to put him back to where he was before, as well as a subsequent counter petition to put him far, far away from the rebuilt St. Mary's Church. As of now, Old Nick resides behind glass in the Swansea Museum, and it is said that he is enclosed in glass more for our protection rather than his. In our number 3 spot today we have the Cursed Portrait. Bernardo de Galvez was born in Spain in 1746 and he went on to become a military leader. He became well known for helping American colonies during the War of Independence before he apparently passed away under mysterious circumstances in 1786. There is a portrait of Bernardo that resides in the Galvez Hotel in Galveston, Texas, which is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in the world, and that makes sense because this portrait is said to be one of the cursed objects that gives the hotel its spooky title. The portrait is located at the end of a hallway in the hotel, and guests have reported the eyes following their every move. People also report a cold or uncomfortable feeling when they get close to the painting, and this is said to be Bernardo's spirit. Some people even swear they can feel him following them around the hotel. It is also said that any picture you try to take of the portrait will come out blurry and distorted unless you ask Bernardo for permission first. In our number 2 spot today we have the Koh-i-Noor diamond. This diamond has an extremely controversial history and is the source of a lot of debate, but regardless of the ongoing conversations over who really owns it, we are here to talk about the curse that this stone is said to hold. This diamond dates back thousands of years and its curse is said to only affect men. It is said that the jewel can bring about great wealth, but it can also bring great misfortune as well to those who own it. Folklore states that "He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all of its misfortunes. Only God or women can wear it with impunity." Throughout the history of the diamond, it was passed among many people and rulers who all fought bloody battles while in possession of it. Every prince who had it is said to have ultimately lost either their power or their life while in possession of it as well. Part of the controversy of the diamond is how it ended up in the hands of the British royal family during colonization in the 1800s. Ever since then, it has only been worn by female monarchs, including Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth. In our number 1 spot today, we have James Dean's car. Okay, this one might seem like a bit of a wild card, but hear me out. Famous actor James Dean passed away from a car accident on September 30th, 1955. At the time, he was driving his silver Porsche 550 Spyder, which he had just recently purchased. This was only the beginning of the car's curse, however, as after James' passing, the remnants of the totaled car were bought by a man named George Barris. He decided to sell parts of the car to James' fans, but when the car was being worked on and taken apart, it ended up falling on a mechanic and it crushed him to death. These two incidents are more than enough to now consider the car cursed, but it still continues on. Once the people who had purchased some of the car parts began receiving them, more strange things happened. 3 of the people who received parts ended up in car accidents, all of which were sadly quite severe. The shell of the car was also stolen, and to this day, it has never been recovered. In our number 10 spot today, we have the Dybbuk box. The box, which was originally just a plain old wine box, is said to have been possessed by a Dybbuk, which, in Jewish mythology, is a malicious demon that takes over the bodies of living people and uses them for evil. The box began to gain attention in 2001 when it was being auctioned off on eBay. The seller explained that he had bought it at an estate sale of a woman who had survived the Holocaust. When he first opened the box, he found 2 1920s pennies, a lock of blonde hair bound with a cord, a lock of black hair bound with a cord, a small statue engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, a small golden wine goblet, 1 dried rosebud, and a single candle holder with 4 octopus-shaped legs. Since he bought the box, he reported that strange things began happening, such as really horrific nightmares for him and anyone who had stayed around or touched the box, and when he gave the box to his mother as a birthday gift, she suffered a stroke the same day. The box ended up in the hands of Zach Bagan, who is a paranormal investigator, and it now resides in his haunted museum. The box also gained even more attention in 2018 when Post Malone touched it, and has apparently been dealing with the repercussions of that ever since. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Iceman. Okay, this one is not an object because it is rather a mummy who was once a real living person, but I still had to include him on this list today because this story is wild. The mummy of Otzi, who is also referred to as the Iceman, was found in 1991 in the Otzal Alps in Italy. It is believed that Otzi lived around 3000 BCE and his body became mummified and preserved because of the glacier that surrounded him post-mortem. While this is an incredibly interesting discovery, the finding of Otzi may have come in a package with an old curse just waiting to be released. Here's the thing, the people who helped with the discovery of Otzi are all dying under mysterious circumstances. I mean, we're currently at person number 7 within 1 year, so that's very suspicious. When molecular archaeologist Tom Loy was writing a book about Otzi, he passed away from a blood-related condition that he was diagnosed with shortly after becoming involved with the Iceman. The German tourist Helmut Simon, who discovered the mummy, fell to his death while hiking in the same spot he saw Otzi. Dieter Warneck, who was the head of the mountain rescue team that was assigned to find the mummy, died of a heart attack at age 45, just an hour after Simon's funeral. To avoid this becoming an hour-long list, I'll stop here, but that is just half of those who seemingly fell victim to the curse of the Iceman. I don't know, maybe disturbing a man who's been in the same spot for 53 centuries wasn't the best idea anyone has ever had. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Hope Diamond. This gorgeous, unusually large diamond is a blue color and worth an insane $250 million. In the off chance you have that kind of money laying around, I still wouldn't recommend purchasing it because it is said to be cursed. The curse dates back to the 17th century, and it is said that whoever wears the diamond will have great misfortune and misery. Legend goes that the diamond was stolen from the eye of a sculpted statue of the Hindu goddess Sita, and since then it has been cursing whoever owns or possesses the 115-carat diamond. Stories of the horrible fates of those who have since owned the diamond include people taking their own lives, people being killed intentionally by others, and some accounts even claim that the owner was, quote, torn to pieces, which sounds like one of the worst fates out there. There have since been replicas made of the stone, and I think just to be as safe as possible, I'll probably stay away from those. just in case. In our number 7 spot today we have Robert the doll. Annabelle gets a lot of attention for being a haunted doll, but Robert is just as terrifying. Robert the doll was a childhood birthday gift from a grandfather to his grandson, who was also named Robert, but more often went by Gene. The story claims that while growing up with Robert, Gene would often be heard by his parents in his bedrooms having conversations with himself in 2 entirely different voices. His parents would sometimes be woken up in the middle of the night to the sound of Gene screaming, only to find him completely frightened in bed with overturned furniture around him. Gene would then blame Robert for all of the strange happenings, and at the time, no one really believed him. Gene kept Robert into adulthood, and it became what people would describe as an unhealthy relationship. Apparently, Gene took Robert everywhere with him and spoke as if he was a living entity rather than a doll. Okay, this story is already not great, but it gets worse. Gene lived in a house as an adult that was called the artist's house. Robert would be left in the upstairs window where children in the area reported seeing the doll disappear and reappear, and they all chose to just stay clear of the house. After Gene passed away in 1974, a woman named Myrtle purchased the house, and apparently Robert as well. Visitors of the house could swear that they could hear footsteps and giggling coming from the attic where Robert was, and some even claimed to see the doll's expression changed if someone spoke poorly of Gene. Myrtle reported Robert moving around the house on his own, and after 20 years she decided she had had enough and donated him to a museum. Robert still lives in the museum where he is safely locked up, but it is said that he still likes to place a little curse on those who take his photo without permission. The walls of the museum near Robert's glass case are riddled with notes from previous visitors and naysayers who are begging Robert for his forgiveness and asking him to remove any curse he has placed on them. In our number 6 spot today we have the Atlantis ring. The Atlantis ring was originally made of clay, and it was found in 1860 in the Valley of the Kings in a tomb of an Egyptian high priest. It was then passed on to Howard Carter, who kept it until he passed away in 1939. The ring was believed to be at least 5,000 years old, and it had geometric symbols carved into it that were unlike anything known in Egypt. Here's where the story gets a little weird though. Howard is one of the people who discovered King Tut's tomb, and he would later tell people he was wearing a talisman when the tomb was opened, also known as the Atlantis ring. He claimed that the ring gave him protection, and that just might be true because he is the only member of the team who didn't die a mysterious death after the opening of the tomb. Even those who visited shortly after the opening of the tomb were subject to this curse, with a total of 18 victims in the end. Howard said that the ring is what protected him against whatever evil forces were at play. So I guess maybe the Atlantis ring is more like an anti-cursed object? I don't know, but what I do know is that it is all quite curious. There are now replicas that are sold, but I'm not sure if any hold the power of the real deal. In our number 5 spot today we have Thomas Busby's chair. Thomas was a man who lived in Thirsk, North Yorkshire, and wasn't known as a very nice man, but he really loved his chair. I guess we all gotta have something. In 1702 he found his father-in-law sitting in it, and it sparked an argument between the two. The father-in-law threatened to take his daughter back, which should have never been a threat considering she's a grown woman, but I guess that's what went on in 1702. Anyway, that's when Busby kicked him out of the house. After this, Busby ended up going over to the father-in-law's house and actually killed him with a hammer and then hid his body in the woods. Of course, the body ended up being found, and this led to Busby getting convicted and sentenced to death. It is said that on his ride to the execution, he asked to stop by his favorite pub for a beer, and this request was fulfilled. Apparently, as he finished his drink, he said, "May sudden death come to anyone who dares sit in my chair." I really don't know what it is with this guy in his chair, but while it currently resides in the Thirsk Museum, it has been recorded that many terrible fates have been met by the people who have sat in the chair. In 1972, it was decided to hang the chair from the ceiling so that no one could ever sit in it again, which is probably for the best. So now, knowing this story, I want you to let me know in the comments, if you had the chance, would you sit in the chair? I wouldn't. In our number 4 spot today we have Annabelle the doll. When I saw the 2014 Annabelle movie, I had no idea it was actually based on a real life doll, but since starting my job here at Most Amazing Top 10, I know all about the real story. This doll now resides inside of the Warrens Occult Museum, where it absolutely belongs, but this story starts off with a college student named Donna who received the doll as a gift from her mother, who had purchased it from an antique store. Donna and her roommate started to notice some pretty creepy things happening and swore that the doll was moving. They said it would appear in different places and positions throughout their apartment before things began to escalate. Donna began to find notes that said help in her apartment, and one night found the doll in a different position and covered in some sort of red substance. The girls then decided to contact a medium who solidified all of their beliefs and told them that the doll had been possessed by the spirit of someone who was killed in their apartment building. For some reason, the girls didn't immediately get rid of the doll, and the story goes that their friend Lou, who was at the girls' apartment, heard strange noises one night and went to investigate, and he was then attacked and killed by Annabelle. The girls finally contacted a priest who told them that the doll was possessed by a demon straight from hell, and then put them in contact with Ed and Lorraine Warren. They tried to do an exorcism on the doll, but it apparently failed, and now it is kept in a glass box in the museum, where it hopefully cannot and will never do any more damage. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Uluru Rock. The Uluru Rock is a large sandstone formation that is located in the southern part of the Northern Territory in Australia. It is sometimes known as Ayers Rock, but regardless of what it is called, this area is sacred for the people indigenous to this place. This is part of the reason that those who visit the rock are asked not to take anything from the site. Despite this, people of course still choose to smuggle pieces of the rock out of the area and home with them. Well, other than the bad karma and just in general feeling like a bad person for doing the one thing you're asked not to do, as it turns out, this rock may hold a more sinister secret. Those who have stolen rocks from the Uluru have experienced things like extremely bad luck, severe illness, and even sometimes the death of those they love. The curse these rocks hold is seemingly so bad that it is very common for the company that runs the tours of the formation to receive letters of apology that contain the stolen rocks. Apparently these letters come so often, at least one a day is expected. Maybe this is a weird coincidence, but it just seems to be happening a little too often for that to be the explanation. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Bazzano vase. The Bazzano vase was cast from silver in the 15th century and was apparently a wedding present for a bride who lived in a small village in Napoli. On the wedding night, however, the bride was found dying on the floor with her hands wrapped around the vase. With her last breaths, she vowed to have her revenge, and at this point it became unclear whether the vase was already cursed, or perhaps if this may be what caused the curse in the first place. As time went on, the vase was handed from person to person within her family, and with each new owner came a mysterious death. Because of this, the family decided to hide the vase away in some sort of secret location, and this worked for a while, until the vase was unearthed once more in 1988. The vase also contained a piece of paper from the family that warned, "Beware, this vase brings death." Well, of course, whoever found the vase did not listen, and instead, they sold it once again. The first buyer, who is said to have been a pharmacist, owned the vase for 3 months before passing away under mysterious circumstances. Then there was the 37-year-old surgeon who died after having the vase for 2 months. After this was the archaeologist who only made it 3 months with this vase in his possession, and at this point you get where this is going. We don't know exactly where the vase ended up, but I'm hoping it's somewhere deep underground. Or maybe in space. Or maybe in the Mariana Trench. Just anywhere far away from all of us. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Goddess of Death. This statue is sometimes also known as the Woman from Lem. This artifact, made out of limestone, was created sometime around 3500 BC, and it was found in Cyprus in 1878. Over the years, it has belonged to many different families who have all been ruined and dismantled by death. After the first 6 years of ownership, all 7 members of the first family died. It then moved on to a second owner, and after 4 years, death began to come to him and his family. There was then a long period where it was unclaimed, but once the third family got a hold of it, several members of that family began to die as well. The third family ended up turning it over to the Royal Scottish Museum, where it thankfully still resides. However, the museum curator who handled the item was mysteriously killed a few days after. It is clear whatever curse this statue holds, it is strong and frightening. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Belcourt Castle chairs. Belcourt Castle is located in Newport, Rhode Island, and it is a former summer cottage. Construction on the cottage started in 1891, with it being completed in 1894, and inside there is a ballroom. This ballroom is important because it is said that it holds a group of haunted chairs. People who have visited the castle have reported a ton of strange happenings regarding this specific set of chairs. The report includes things like feeling chills racing up up and down their spines or feeling a strange sensation in a shift of energy while standing near the chairs, and some people have even explained how they have been pushed out of the chairs by an invisible force. I feel like just hearing these stories might be enough to explain the energy shift some people are feeling, but actually being pushed out of a chair by some sort of invisible force would be absolutely terrifying. And simply unexplainable. What's going on there? In our number 9 spot today we have The Orphan Story. This is a book that was originally written in the early 1600s, but it didn't end up getting published until 2018. The Orphan Story is about a 14-year-old Spanish boy who heads to the Americas. You know, a classic kind of coming-of-age feel-good story, right? Well, not exactly, and that is exactly the reason it took so long for this book to be published. While the curse in this book doesn't come from the story itself, there is something dark lurking in those pages. The book's publisher, Belinda Palacios, who worked on the book for 2 years, explained that throughout those years she was often warned of the cursed book and how every publisher who had tried to work on it before ended up passing away in a mysterious way before they could finish the book. When Belinda looked into this, it turned out to be true. Her research showed that those who had tried to edit the book before her either found themselves in horrible accidents or with strange illnesses. Luckily, Belinda made it through the process unscathed, so let's hope that maybe the curse has been lifted. Either way, it's probably one I'll personally stay away from. In our number 8 spot today we have the Dybbuk box. This box, which was originally just a plain old wine box, is said to have been possessed by a Dybbuk, which in Jewish mythology is a malicious demon that takes over the bodies of living people and uses them for evil. The box began to gain attention in 2001 when it was being auctioned off on eBay. The seller explained that he had bought it at an estate sale of a woman who had survived the Holocaust. When he first opened the box, he found 2 1920s pennies, a lock of blonde hair bound with a cord, a lock of black or brown hair bound with a cord, a small statue engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, a small golden wine goblet, 1 dried rosebud, and a single candle holder with 4 octopus-shaped legs. Since he bought the box, he reported that strange things began happening, such as really horrific nightmares for him and anyone who had stayed around or touched the box, and when he gave this box to his mother as a birthday gift, she suffered a stroke the same day. The box ended up in the hands of Zach Bagan, who is a paranormal investigator, and it now resides in his haunted museum. The box also gained even more attention in 2018 when Post Malone touched it and has apparently been dealing with the repercussions of that ever since. In our number 7 spot today we have the Iceman. Okay, this one is not an object because it is rather a mummy who was once a real living person, but I still had to include him on this list because this story is wild. The mummy of Otzi, who is referred to as the Iceman, was found in 1991 in the Ötztal Alps in Italy. It is believed that Otzi lived around 3000 BC and his body became mummified and preserved because of the glacier that surrounded him post-mortem. While this is an incredibly interesting discovery, the finding of Otzi may have come in a package with an old curse just waiting to be released. Here's the thing, the people who helped with the discovery of Otzi are all dying under very mysterious circumstances. I mean, we are currently at person number 7 within 1 year, so that's very suspicious. When molecular archaeologist Tom Loy was writing a book about Otzi, he passed away from a blood-related condition that he was diagnosed with shortly after becoming involved with the Iceman. The German tourist Helmut Simon, who discovered the mummy, fell to his death while hiking in the same spot he saw Otzi. Dieter Warneck, who was the head of the mountain rescue team that was assigned to find the mummy, died of a heart attack at age 45, just an hour after Simon's funeral. To avoid this becoming an hour-long list, I'll stop here, but that is just half of those who seemingly fell victim to the curse of the Iceman. I don't know, maybe disturbing a man who's been in the same spot for 53 centuries wasn't the best idea anyone's ever had. In our number 6 spot today we have The Anguished Man. This is a painting that holds many secrets, the first 2 being when and who created it. This painting comes from an unknown source and it is absolutely eerie. It depicts exactly what the name would suggest, a man looking like he is in great pain and suffering. The painting is apparently made of a mixture of paint and blood, and it is said that the creator ended up taking his own life shortly after making it. Because of the unknown origins and this little tale that goes along with it, the painting painting already gives off some extremely creepy energy, but if that wasn't enough, the man who currently owns the painting claims that it is haunted. He even uploads YouTube videos of the strange happenings around the painting, and it's said that sometimes whispers can be heard coming from it. Whatever is going on with this painting, it's not good. In our number 5 spot today, we have the ballista balls. A ballista was used in the Roman military, and it was kind of similar to a crossbow, but was much larger and could shoot arrows or stones. In 1989, there was archaeologists that were working by the Israeli-Syrian border when they found these large stones close to what seemed to be the remains of a ballista, but around 1995, the stones ended up getting stolen, but it took a while for anyone to notice. Fast forward to 2015, and the same stones that were stolen ended up in the courtyard of the museum in Israel with a note left from the person who stole them. The note explained that ever since they took them, he had experienced terrible luck and believed the stones were the reason. He had a very successful business that suddenly began to fail after he took the stones, and later his family abandoned him and he was forced to get rid of almost all of his possessions to settle all of his debts so as to not go bankrupt. He mentioned that he believed the stones were cursed and that they were the root of all of his problems. Whether or not these stones are actually cursed or this was just some pretty heavy karma, I hope this guy has been able to get his life back on track. In our number 4 spot today, we have James Dean's car. Okay, this might seem like a bit of a wild card, but hear me out. Famous actor James Dean passed away from a car accident on September 30th, 1955. He was driving his silver Porsche 550 Spyder, which he had just purchased recently. This was only the beginning of the car's curse, however, as after James' passing, the remnants of the totaled car were bought by a man named George Barris. He decided to sell the parts of the car to James' fans, but when the car was being worked on and taken apart, it ended up falling on the mechanic and crushed him to death. These two incidents are more than enough to now consider this car cursed, but it still continues on. Once the people who had purchased some of the car parts began receiving them, more strange things happened. 3 of the people who received parts ended up in car accidents, all of which were sadly quite severe. The shell of the car was also stolen, and to this day it has never been recovered. In our number 3 spot today, we have the cursed stoop chair. This isn't just any old stoop chair, it's the one that belonged to Thomas Busby. Thomas was a man who lived in Thirsk and wasn't known as a very nice man, but he really loved his chair. In 1702, he found his father-in-law sitting in it, and it sparked an argument between the two. The father-in-law threatened to take his daughter back, and that's when Busby kicked him out of the house. After this, Busby ended up going over to the father-in-law's house and actually kills him with a hammer and then hid the body in the woods. Of course, the body ended up being found, and this led to Busby getting convicted and sentenced to death. It is said that on his ride to his execution, he asked to stop by his favorite pub for a beer, and this request was fulfilled. Apparently, as he finished his drink, he said, "May sudden death come to anyone who dare sit in my chair." I really don't know what it was with this guy in his chair, but while it currently resides in the Thirsk Museum, it has been recorded that many terrible fates have been met by the people who have sat in the chair. In 1972, it was decided to hang the chair from the ceiling so that no one could sit in it again, which is probably for the best. If you could sit in the chair, would you? In our number 2 spot today, we have Old Nick. Old Nick is often referred to as the Swansea Devil, and his story dates back to the 1890s, although he now resides in the Swansea Museum. So, back in the 1890s, there was the prestigious St. Mary's Church located right in the center of town. The church decided to do some renovations, and they put out some ads to hire someone. When a local builder applied for the job and was turned down, he had a major overreaction and decided he wanted to get some kind of revenge. He went and bought the row of cottages that lay next to the church and then demolished them all. In their place, he built large brick offices, and then he commissioned the carving of Old Nick and placed him right on top of the office building looking down at St. Mary's Church. Legend goes that he even placed the curse himself by saying, "When your church is destroyed and burnt to the ground, my devil will remain laughing." Some years later, during World War II, a German blitz came through the town and it left most of the town, including St. Mary's, completely destroyed and burnt to the ground. But the office building with Old Nick was undamaged and remained standing. For a while, Old Nick Nick seemed to kind of disappear, but once he resurfaced, there was a petition to put him back where he was before, as well as a subsequent counter petition to put him far, far away from the rebuilt St. Mary's Church. As of now, Old Nick resides behind glass in the Swansea Museum, and it is said that he is enclosed in glass more for our protection than his. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Blarney Stone. For hundreds of years, the Blarney Stone has resided within Blarney Castle, which is near Cork, Ireland. The stone is a piece of limestone, and legend says that those who give the stone a smooch will then be given the gift of gab. This little smooch can bestow the power of being able to talk your way out of any situation, which would be incredibly useful, but there are always those who try to indulge in too much of a good thing. The issues start when you attempt to take a piece of the stone, no matter how small, away from its home. Those who don't follow the rules and take the stone end up being cursed with bad luck. Every year the castle receives parcels from greedy tourists who tried their luck at stealing portions of the stone. These parcels are returned with the intention of lifting the curse of misfortune. It is said that once the stone is returned, the curse will be lifted, which is most definitely good news. I guess the moral of this curse, however, is to not be greedy and just follow the rules.
Number 10. Spaceballs. Over the course of decades, humans have begun to clog up the Earth's surrounding area with space junk. Defunct projects, satellites, broken or discarded pieces of spacecrafts. It will become a serious problem at some point, and it's beginning to show. There have been many instances now of strange metallic balls crashing into the ground and being found in multiple countries: Mexico, Spain, Vietnam, Namibia, Australia, and many others. They hurtle towards the Earth, and some have crashed a little too close for comfort. Most of these mysterious objects seem to just be auxiliary fuel tanks from satellites that were discarded or crashed nearby, and they fell off early, landing in a completely different place than was planned. But some of these, like the one in Mexico, still require more investigation, as they don't match any of the parts that we would have expected to be entering our atmosphere. This one even has an antenna, and reportedly fell from the sky while making strange noises, but was not accompanied by any fire, like a lot of debris entering the atmosphere would have. So where did these things come from then? Number 9. WTF. In 2013, the Catalina Sky Survey at the University of Arizona spotted an object in the night sky, and it seemed to have some weird properties. The object didn't move as though it was solid like rock, but it seemed to possibly be hollow. And it had a density of about 10% that of water, and it seemed to be about 6.5 feet in diameter. Large enough to house a person. But this didn't match any of the space junk that space agencies had been tracking for the previous years, and adding even more to the confusion, the object seemed to disappear from sight, and it was not seen again until 2 years later, when it was officially given the name WT1190F, or WTF for short. Pretty fitting. Video and photos were taken of the object's re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, which was a scientific feat on its own, but the object was never recovered. It is assumed that it burned up from the immense heat of re-entry, but many people believe that it crashed into the ocean, and whatever was inside was either captured or lies in wait at the bottom of the sea, like those UFOs NASA admits that they found. Remember those? That was crazy. Number 8. Struck by a space rock. Alright, we've got 2 stories here, and you can either think of them as the result of a curse, or karma, or cosmic coincidence, but either way, these 2 women had a bad day. In 2001, Lottie Williams was exercising in a park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when she looked up and saw a great ball of fire in the air. It was a rocket coming back towards Earth. She watched it approach, and as it got larger in the sky, she expressed her worry to her friends, but then it broke up into pieces and it was no longer visible to her. A few moments later, she felt what she described as a tap on her shoulder, and then something fell to the ground. This small blackened piece of metal had fallen from the rocket and just grazed her, and it could have been a lot worse, but she walked away being the first person to be hit by man-made space debris. But another woman was not as lucky. On November 30th, 1954, Ann Hodges was napping in her Alabama home when a piece of meteorite crashed through her roof and struck her in the side. It left a 3-foot wide hole in her roof and also left a massive bruise on her thigh and hand where she was hit. Luckily, the damages were only surface level, and though she went to the hospital the next night, it was because of her stress, not the injury. But if the space rock had been a few inches to the side, Ann would not have lived to tell the tale as the first person to be struck by a meteorite. I'm not sure if she's cursed with extremely bad luck or has really good luck. I'll leave that up to you. Number 7. Skylab. Launched by NASA as the first American space station, Skylab was cursed with issues from the moment it launched. The station strapped to a Saturn V rocket sustained severe damage during its deployment, including the loss of the station's micrometeoroid shield and one of its main solar panels, requiring it to have the first ever repair to an object in space, which is pretty cool. But it was again hit with problems when one of the pieces destabilized from orbit earlier than expected and crashed back to Earth. But it doesn't stop there. Due to increased solar activity, Skylab actually ended up falling towards Earth a year earlier than it was supposed to. There was supposed to be a shuttle mission to boost it back into orbit, but the shuttle wasn't ready in time. In an international media frenzy, the Skylab crash was everywhere. People had shirts with targets, contests were made to bring pieces of the wreckage for cash prizes, and people waited for the show. Due to a 4% calculation error on re-entry, the station did not burn up as quickly as expected, and pieces fell into Australia only 300 miles from Perth in an almost completely unpopulated area. Man, talk about a crash and burn. These scientists missed the mark so many times it's impressive the thing even hit Earth. Number 6. 300 million year old machine part. In 2013, a Russian man named Dmitry was adding coal to a fire when he noticed something strange. A shiny piece of metal was sticking out of the rock, and when he broke open the piece of coal, he found what seemed to be a piece of a metal bar with teeth, like a piece of a gear. When analyzed, it was found to be made of aluminum with about 3% magnesium, an alloy that is not generally produced today. Not only that, but further examination shows machining marks, implying that it's a man-made piece, and it's similar to those that we may find in a modern microscope or other small machinery. But no one can explain how a seemingly man-made part appears in a piece of coal that was 300 million years old. So was this thing a remnant of a past unknown civilization? Maybe something from a time traveler or alien? One explanation is that it could have fallen to Earth from a meteorite all that time ago, but it wouldn't explain the fact that it seems man-made. This little hunk of metal continues to baffle scientists today. Number 5. Nuclear nuisance. The Cosmos 954 reconnaissance satellite launched by the Soviet Union in 1977 had some major issues. The launch went fine. Unlike Skylab, its deployment also went off without a hitch, and this long-term orbital satellite seemed like another mission success for the Soviet space program. It was meant to be circling the globe for years and years, but just 3 months later, the North American Aerospace Defense Command noticed the satellite making erratic maneuvers, changing the altitude of its orbit by up to 50 miles. And in secret meetings, the Soviet officials warned their US counterparts that they had lost control over the vehicle, and the system, which was intended to propel the spent nuclear reactor core into a safe disposal orbit, had failed. And just 4 months after its launch, it fell towards the Earth, right over Canada's Northwest Territories. The Soviets claimed that it had completely disintegrated upon re-entry, but that was not the case, as we discovered a 600-kilometer path of debris leading through the country. And a huge portion of it was radioactive because they failed to launch the reactor out. We Canadians began Operation Morning Light, a recovery effort that lasted over a year and for which we billed the Soviet Union $6 million, though they only ever paid us $3 million. Many small pieces of debris were collected, as well as 12 large portions of the satellite, only 2 of which were not radioactive. Number 4. Proof of panspermia. The theory of panspermia is that life did not naturally begin on Earth, but that it began with microbes stuck in space ice that fell to Earth on meteorites, and the amount of debate around this topic is huge, and we have a few examples that may just prove the theory. The Polonnaruwa meteorite was one that fell in Sri Lanka in 2012, and meteorites are always a good find, but this one was different. 12 days after it was witnessed falling through the sky, a scientist published a paper stating that after studying some electron micrographs, his team discovered fossilized diatoms, microscopic phytoplankton, inside the meteorite. In addition, his team of scientists reported in a separate article that they are certain that it is a meteorite that originated from a comet that also contained living diatoms. The microbes were remarkably similar to those found on Earth, leading to a debate on whether it was simply contaminated from the Earth's surface. But there is another example with even stronger proof of microscopic alien life. In 2018, a meteorite landed on a frozen lake in Michigan, and when it was examined, thousands of organic compounds that were formed billions of years ago were found. It helped that the quick recovery, along with the cold temperature, kept the water inside frozen for studying. Research is still being done, but this find has thrown the scientific world for a loop. Hopefully the organisms don't leave us with some alien curse or disease. Number 3. The Chelyabinsk meteor. Many of us will remember the 2013 meteor that rocked the world. At 20 meters in diameter, it was the largest natural object to enter enter our atmosphere since the Tunguska event, which destroyed a wide, remote, forested, and very sparsely populated area of Serbia. The Chelyabinsk meteor also is the only meteor confirmed to have resulted in many injuries, though they were all from indirect causes. There are many videos of the event and they are truly terrifying, especially when you learn that the meteor was completely undetected until it entered our atmosphere, which caused worldwide panic. The flash as it began to burn up was brighter than the sun, and when it exploded midair, the energy output was equivalent to the atomic weapon used on Hiroshima, sending out a massive shockwave that damaged buildings and was felt and heard for hundreds of miles. All of the 1,500 people injured were hurt while running or from broken glass or other indirect factors of the meteor. There was even another meteor which was detected to have a close approach on the same day, which was 10 meters larger and flew by us only 16 hours later. Man, February 15th, 2013 was a busy day for meteors. Number 2. Oumuamua. Discovered by the University of Hawaii's Pan-STARRS-1 telescope in 2017, Oumuamua is the first known interstellar object to visit our solar system. It was originally classified as a comet, but there were no signs of cometary activity after we witnessed its slingshot past the sun at a blistering speed of 196,000 miles per hour, or 87.3 kilometers per second. It was briefly classified as an asteroid until new measurements found it was accelerating slightly, which is very strange for any interstellar body. This massive cigar-shaped object is nearly a quarter mile long, or 400 meters, and its elongated shape is unlike anything we've witnessed in our solar system. Observation has shown that it may have come from the star system of Vega, though with the speed it was moving, it would have taken over 300 million years to make the journey to our solar system, and Vega was nowhere near that position at that time, leading to further questions. Many scientists believe that this could actually be an alien superstructure, as its strange journey and acceleration are studied more and more. Paul Kotis, manager of the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, said that it's a strange visitor from a faraway star system, shaped like nothing we've ever seen in our own solar system neighborhood. Whether it's just an interstellar asteroid or someone coming to see what's up with Earth, we may never know, as it's being launched away from us after making a slingshot maneuver around our sun, the angle and trajectory of which some use as proof as the object being controlled or even driven by something. And finally, we reach our number 1, the Hypatia Stone. The Hypatia Stone is one of the single greatest astronomical discoveries that we have ever made. Found in the Sahara Desert by Ali A. Barakat, this is no ordinary meteorite, but one that contains the remnants of a rare type of supernova. Some have even described it as a supernova in a bottle. Named after the ancient mathematician and astronomer Hypatia, who was the first female scholar in her field to have her life and accomplishments recorded, overcoming sexism in the process. Scientists are still learning more about its origins. It's believed that the stone was born in what is known as a Type 1a supernova, a rare kind of supernova where a dying star or white dwarf begins to leech energy off of a nearby star and regains energy in the process. These so-called vampire stars circle each other until the white dwarf has recovered enough energy to reignite the stellar reaction and explodes in a massive cloud of dust and pure energy, shooting things imbued with strange elements out into the ether. Measuring the metals found inside the stone is how we verified that it came from this kind of supernova, and that it crashed to Earth nearly 28 million years ago after being launched through space by the explosion. Having a supernova in our hands has helped us answer so many questions about the physics of space, but if you ask me, if there was one interstellar item that could have an alien curse, it's the rock that contains pieces of a rare supernova. Sounds like something an alien from Doctor Who would need to power their death machine or something.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the statue. This statue, or bust, is said to have been made by a man named William who enjoyed making these sorts of things out of clay. Unfortunately, however, legend goes that this specific statue was made on the same day that William was crushed to death during a tragic work accident. A co-worker of his who showed up to work the following day found that this statue was still there, so he took it home with him. For a while he kept the statue hidden, but when he took it out to display it, things started to go awry. It started with just a heavy and uninviting feeling, but soon things escalated. He began to hear doors slamming on their own, only to go and find them wide open. If anything was placed next to the statue, the next time he would find it completely shattered, and at one point he found the statue in a position that he never placed it in. He finally had the last straw when he saw a dark, shadowy figure, or a sort of mist, moving around near where he placed the statue. After this, he was so spooked he had a friend list list the item for him on eBay because he just simply needed to get rid of it. In our number 9 spot today we have Uluru Rock. Uluru Rock is a large sandstone formation that is located in the southern part of the Northern Territory in Australia. It is sometimes known as Ayers Rock, but regardless of what it is called, this area is sacred for the people indigenous to the land. This is part of the reason that those who visit the rock are asked to not take anything from the site. Despite this, people of course still choose to smuggle pieces of the rock out of the area and home with them. Other than the bad karma and just in general feeling like a bad person for doing the one thing you're asked not to do, as it turns out this rock may hold a more sinister secret. Those who have stolen rocks from the Uluru have experienced things like extremely bad luck, severe illness, and sometimes even the death of those they love. The curse these rocks hold is seemingly so bad that it is very common for the company that runs the tours of the formation to receive letters of apology that contain the stolen rocks. Apparently these letters come so often, at least one a day is expected. Maybe this is a weird coincidence, but it seems to be happening a little too often for that to be the explanation. In our number 8 spot today we have the beds. Back in 1986, couple Deborah and Alan Tallman moved into a new home with their children in Wisconsin. The following year they bought a second-hand set of bunk beds for their kids for $100, but as it would turn out, they bought much more than they had originally bargained for. When they brought the bunk beds into their home, they clearly must have brought something else along with it. It started when they began to see strange shapes in their home, and they would hear disembodied voices that, despite how hard they tried, they could not find the source of. They found themselves fighting with clocks and radios that turned on by themselves, they would find furniture that had moved seemingly all by itself, and sometimes they'd even see an apparition of an old woman. In the end, they not only threw the beds in the landfill, but they also moved from the home just to be safe. As far as we know, the beds remained in the landfill, but who's to say for sure? In our number 7 spot today we have the Crying Children paintings. These paintings were a series created by an Italian painter who was known as Giovanni Bregolin, but his name was really Bruno Amarillo. Bruno was born in Venice in 1911 and fought in World War II, which ended up being the inspiration for a lot of his paintings. During his time in the war, he saw a lot of suffering, and this is where he got the idea for the series of Crying Children paintings. After the paintings were sold, there began to be reports of fires in all of the places where the paintings were held. While this could have just been a strange coincidence, the weirdest part is that the paintings always remained intact while everything else around them was burned. This quickly became the most talked about thing and was on the front of every newspaper, and the paintings quickly gained the nickname Diablo. It caused the paintings to end up being replicated and mass produced, but none of the replicas hold quite the same powers as the originals. In our number 6 spot today we have the Goddess statue. The Goddess of Death statue is also known as the Woman from the Lem. This artifact was made out of limestone and it was created somewhere around 3500 BC and was found in Cyprus in 1878. Over the years it has belonged to many different families who all have been ruined and dismantled by death. After the first 6 years of ownership, all 7 members of the first family died. It then moved on to a second owner, and after 4 years death began to come to him and his family as well. There was then a long period where it was unclaimed, but once the third family finally got a hold of it, several members of that family began to die as well. The third family ended up turning it over to the Royal Scottish Museum because it is of course an ancient relic, but legend goes that the museum curator who initially took care of it died within a year of receiving it. So maybe the curse lives on. In our number 5 spot today we have the goblet. This is an item that was found in a museum, but it was a museum of specifically haunted things, so I feel like it still counts. This goblet is said to have been used for rituals of necromancy, which poses a few questions for me personally. What did they put in it and presumably drink out of it? Holy water? Wine? Blood? All the above? Who knows? Either way, here's the real kicker. This goblet was of course for sale on eBay because why not? And the seller was claiming that it has an amazing energy to it. Okay. What kind of energy? Well, they said that some find it strangely positive, but that many perceive it as negative and malignant. Alright. Don't think I'll be bidding on that auction, to be perfectly honest. In our number 4 spot today we have the Surrey ghost car. On December 11th, 2002, a call came into the Surrey Police Department. The caller reported that they had just seen a car lose control and run off the road and then presumably crash. It was of course an emergency call, but not necessarily anything out of the ordinary. That was until authorities got to the location and realized that they couldn't find any evidence of a crash. They kept searching and ended up finding a maroon colored car that was nose down in a ditch nearby, nearby, but this car was covered in so much undergrowth that it must have been here for months. This meant that somehow this crash went undetected for 5 months, and worst of all, so did the body that lay nearby. Using dental records, they were able to identify the body as a man who had been wanted for robbery since July of that year. It is said that the sighting of the car leaving the road was a ghostly replay of the events that had taken place 5 months prior. In our number 3 spot today, we have doorknobs. To be honest, I wasn't expecting to ever hear about haunted doorknobs, but this might just be a thing that really does exist. These doorknobs were listed on eBay, and the seller explained that they were once the knobs seen on the doors at an asylum, which truly lands on the list of creepiest places in the world. Considering everything that is said to have gone on at places like these, it truly doesn't surprise me one bit. We're looking at you, lobotomies and other horrific mental health treatments of the past. These doorknobs must have quite literally opened the door to some terrifying things that I'm sure many of us would prefer to not even think about. According to the eBay listing, the asylum that they came from after it was abandoned is said to have had strange whispers, occurrences, and horrifying noises coming from it. This is all to say that maybe that trip to Home Depot is better than buying antique. Just this one time. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Nightmare Doll. Haunted dolls like Annabelle and even Robert get a lot of hype, but they certainly aren't the only dolls with stories of curses and hauntings behind them. This Nightmare Doll was listed for sale on eBay, and according to the seller, the doll is possessed by a Dybbuk, which is a malicious demon or entity. The seller of the doll is actually someone who apparently specializes in selling these sort of paranormal items that no one wants anymore. The seller explained that the owner of the doll bought it at an antique shop, and while they did tell her about what the doll held, she didn't know what the word meant, so she took it anyways. Soon after purchasing it, she realized that anyone who came into contact with the doll was then plagued with terrifying nightmares and occurrences of these sort of shadow people. She only could handle this all for a couple of months before she handed the doll over for it to be sold and moved far, far away from her. In our number 1 spot today, we have the carving. This is a carving that was sold on eBay in 2013, which the sellers claimed had been in their family for over 60 years. It was originally found by the seller's grandparents in the attic of their home. This was back in the 1950s, and when it was found, the grandparents asked the original owners of the home where it had come from. They explained that it was a gift from a prisoner who is said to have carved it. The seller explained in their post that, quote, anyone who comes in contact with it seems to feel strange or creeped out by it. The statue mostly didn't cause too much harm, that was, until the seller tried to put it on display in their home. Once it was taken out of an old box and placed in a cabinet, strange occurrences began. They said that, quote, I began to experience the television turning off and on, lights coming on in rooms no one was in, the kids' toys coming on in the middle of the night in their room at 3 AM. At the end of the day, despite the troubles this person had with the statue, they still ended up selling it for $85. Not a bad deal. Get rid of a demon and gain some cash for it.
In at number 10, we have the eBay mirror. So I remember reading this story a few years ago and being absolutely fascinated. 2 guys living in a shared house in Muswell Hill, London, started experiencing weird goings on when their landlord hung a mirror in the house. This mirror was reportedly found in a skip, or dumpster, right outside the property. 20-year-old student Joseph Birch and 34-year-old painter Sotiris Charalambous say that they were immediately met with bad feelings, followed by bad luck, misery, and even sickness. Charalambous even said he woke up in the night screaming with stabbing pains. He attributed all of this horror to the mirror. Things became enough for the pair when Birch said he saw flickering shadows and glimpses of black darkness coming from the mirror. He then woke up with scratch marks all over himself. The pair put the mirror on eBay for £100 and sold it for just over the asking price. I, for one, would not want to own that mirror though.
Okay, moving on to number 9, we have bunk beds. In 1987, a haunted bunk bed in Wisconsin became a topic of national coverage when a family dramatically fled their home in winter after reports of hauntings. Later, the TV show Unsolved Mysteries documented the paranormal activities. It all started when Alan and Debbie Tallman bought bunk beds from a secondhand shop and immediately noticed strange goings-on in their home in a small town of Horica. Soon the family noticed the radio would switch on its own, and the children who slept in the bed saw saw an ugly old woman in their room. As things started opening and closing on their own accord in the same room as the bed, the family got their local pastor in, who felt that there was a devil in the bed. After things went bad to worse, the family destroyed the bunk beds and left the house. I think they did the right thing. And now moving on to number 8, we have more craziness. We got a teddy bear. Teddy bears are supposed to be used for, cuddling and comfort, not for smothering people. One teddy bear in India caused a stir on the internet in July of 2016, so it happened earlier on this year in the summertime, as footage was released on YouTube of a reportedly possessed bear. Uploader Paris Diwa captured the video in which the huge stuffed bear seems to move on its own. I mean, is this real life right now? Many YouTube viewers are questioning the authenticity of the footage, but who knows?
Warning, this next haunted object has actually caused people who see the picture of it to experience shocking symptoms. Are you ready, Landon?
Are we gonna show them the picture?
Yeah,
Ooh.
And there's some shocking stuff going on, so close your eyes to this next one if you're scared of that kind of thing.
I'm scared.
In at number 7, we have Peggy. In 2015, footage of a creepy doll caused absolute chaos around the world, inciting paranormal enthusiasts, with many feeling chest pains and experiencing headaches and visions after viewing the pictures or videos of her. British paranormal investigator Jane Harris, based in Shropshire, says that she was inundated with messages after images and footage of Peggy were posted on the internet. Harris runs an organisation called Haunted Dolls and was given the doll by a petrified woman. She is thought to have the power to visit people in their dreams, even haunting one woman to warn her about her cat that died the next day. Spooky. One woman even said that she had a heart attack just hours after viewing a picture of Peggy. Mediums who have worked with Peggy believe that she is linked to the Holocaust. Terrifying.
Following that, now at number 6, Bassano vase. The story goes that a 15th century carved silver vase was given to an Italian bride on her wedding night in Napoli. That very evening she was murdered and vowed to seek vengeance. After her death, it became clear that the family members that her spirit had somehow possessed the vase and caused death and misery to all those who touched it. After a period of time, the vase was buried and reportedly unearthed in 1988. The vase contained a warning note about the bad luck associated with its possession. The owner auctioned it for 4 million lira, so that's around $2,500 at the time. The new owner died and triggered a similar pattern in the new era of deaths. The vase has now been buried, and you should not go looking for it.
Okay, this really creeps me out. In at number 5, we have the Anguished Man painting. To be honest, looking at this painting, I have absolutely no idea who would want to own it. It is even more terrifying than a Phoebe Buffay creation. Sean Robinson acquired the Anguished Man painting from his grandmother, who believed that the artist used part of his own blood to paint the picture. The painting is said to be haunted by the spirit of the artist, and Sean has even set up a YouTube channel to document some of the crazy goings on surrounding the picture. This includes doors slamming and the air in the room changing to make it all cold. It is now said to be locked in the basement of Mr. Robinson's house, where I think it should stay forever, and then he should move, and no one should ever go there.
Robert the doll, another doll, and this one is horrifying.
Sorry, did you say another doll?
Another doll.
I'm out of here.
There's too many dolls on this list. And as Rebecca walks off, we continue. Everybody meet Robert. Robert is a 20th century sailor doll that used to belong to Eugene Otto. Eugene used to blame many naughty things he did on Robert, and the pair would often be overheard talking. Eugene's parents assuming Robert's voice was really Eugene. When Eugene died in 1974, Robert was left in the attic and was discovered by the next owners in the home. And they had a 10-year-old daughter. The small girl was terrified of Robert and claimed he wanted to kill her. Neighbors of the house would swear they saw Robert at the window on occasion, and the plumber would work at the house found the doll to move across the room on its own. A reporter from the area, Malcolm Ross, visited the house to see Robert and was disturbed to sense that Robert was listening to his conversation and was understanding him. A final doll, and perhaps the scariest of them all, we have the basis for the movie The Conjuring and Annabelle. At number 3, we have Annabelle the doll. Annabelle currently lives in a glass box at the Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, run by Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens received the doll after it lived with a student nurse and her roommate in the 1970s. The doll behaved strangely, so the pair contacted a medium who suggested she was haunted by a dead girl named Annabelle Higgins. The pair tried to nurture and care for the girl, but she turned out to be malicious and evil, leading the pair to give the doll away. That was a good choice.
Have we finished talking about dolls?
I have a feeling we're not finished.
We have. I think we have.
Okay.
Promise me, because if not, I'm not coming back.
Okay, moving on from dolls, we got.
Yeah, moving on from dolls, we have Busby's stoop chair. Mystery. Now located on the ceiling at the Thirsk Museum in North Yorkshire, the infamous Busby stoop chair has been linked to many deaths over the years. The story goes that a Yorkshireman named Thomas Busby, who was a fraudster and a drunkard, loved his wooden chair. In 1702, he fell in love with a young woman named Elizabeth Howarty. Her father, Daniel, did not approve and came to drag Elizabeth away from their home in a local inn. As Busby arrived back in the inn, he was most offended to find Daniel Howarty sitting in his favourite chair, so he murdered him. Normal reaction. As he was later tried and hung for the murder, he swore a curse that all that sit in his best chair will die. This chair ever since has been rumoured to be haunted by Busby himself. The chair stayed in the inn for years, reportedly taking the lives of 63 people who sat in it. One chimney sweep who sat in the chair while drinking at the pub was found hanged nearby the next morning, and it's said that all those who sat in the chair ever since who went to war did not come back. As late as the 1970s, 2 people died after sitting in the chair. Luckily, it was then taken away and put in a museum and strung up on the ceiling so no one can sit in it ever again. Okay, we are here at number 1. The possessed items on this list seem to have a varying degree of legitimacy. However, this last one really does have an irrefutably concerning history. I can't get over this. At number 1, we have Franz Ferdinand's car. Many history buffs will know that World War I was triggered by the murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife in Bosnia. The pair were in their luxury Graf and Stift limousine, which stalled at the very wrong moment outside a cafe from which a man who'd previously tried to assassinate him was just exiting. What a crazy coincidence. Their deaths, probably caused by the stalled car in part, were not the last tragedy to befall the limo. The car's second owner, General Potierek, went insane after driving the car and was soon committed to an asylum. Many say the car is possessed by an evil spirit. In fact, throughout the war and the period shortly after, the limo was involved in 6 accidents and 13 deaths. Why are people still driving this thing? If we're also to attribute the car as the direct cause of the death of Franz Ferdinand, and thus the sparker of the First World War, it could also be directly linked to the death of 17 million people, which in turn set the stage for the death of 60 million people in World War II. So that car has some blood on its hands. Suffice to say, after a final death spree in which 5 people travelling to a wedding were killed, the car was finally donated to the War History Museum of Vienna in 1926 and has caused no deaths since. Thank God.
Starting off this countdown, we have the deck of cards. Now, I don't know about you, but normal deck of cards don't have number 1 cards. In replace, they have aces. But would you look at that? This odd deck had 1s, which makes me very uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but I've never seen this before. If we're playing Go Fish and you whip out a 1, I'm leaving, I'm sorry. Jokes aside, we have decks with aces because they can serve as the highest card or lowest. So it can serve as a 1 or more than 1. That's why we don't have 1s, according to Google, don't quote me. So I don't know where this person got their cards from, but it just seems wrong. In our 9th spot today, we have the knockoffs. Sometimes brand name pieces can be expensive and we want the same or similar item but cheaper. That's where knockoff brands come into play. Take a look at these cereals. They're so similar, yet so different. So we got Cocoa Rice instead of Cocoa Puffs, we got Honey Nut Crispy Oats instead of Honey Nut Cheerios, Fruit Rounds instead of Fruit Loops, Marshmallows and Stars instead of Lucky Charms, Cookies instead of Cookie Crisp, and lastly, Kids Crunch instead of Captain Crunch. Now if I saw an aisle filled with those, I think I was transported to another universe. In our 8th spot today, we have the map. Now let's get to a serious one. In 1929, a group of historians discovered something pretty strange. It was a map from 1513 written on the skin of a gazelle. It was created by a well-known admiral of the Turkish Navy. Well, what's odd is that the map included Europe and North Africa, the coast of Brazil, several islands, and even Antarctica, which was not discovered until 300 years later. Not only that, but it was said that Antarctica was not
covered in ice. The last time that occurred was more than 6,000 years ago. So this whole thing just doesn't make any sense. How did this man map a continent that's been covered by ice for the last 6,000 years? Maybe he's from a parallel universe, or maybe the map is. In our 7th spot today, we have the stop sign. Again, another item that just makes me uncomfortable. Someone decided to create a lowercase stop sign, and it looks like it's like stop, no, just stop. Like it's too gentle. As a wise movie once said, no, stick to the stuff you know. It's better by far to keep things as they are. Don't mess with the flow. Stick to the status quo. If you know what movie that's from, I automatically love you. But maybe this person was driving around in another universe. Who knows? In our 6th spot today, we have the Oumuamua artifact. Hopefully I pronounced that right, because in another video I didn't, so now I'm changing the pronunciation. Let me know if I get it right, just be gentle, folks. In 2017, this object was found flying by in our solar system. Now it's quite weird. It looks like a space rock, but it's not a comet or asteroid. It's too small and oddly shaped to be an asteroid. This thing is long. In fact, this is now the most elongated known space object. Not only that, but astronomers were shocked by the condition of it. Astronomers thought that the first space rock to enter our solar system would be a ball of ice and rocks like a comet. But this isn't one. Now, not only is it not shaped like one, but there's usually a cloud of dust and gas surrounding comets, and this object just doesn't have that. But before scientists could study it too much, it left our solar system. All we know is that the strange object came from another solar system. Or maybe a different universe, and that's why it's so weird and unlike anything we've ever seen before. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the archless McDonald's. Imagine this, okay? You're hungry, you're driving down a road, madly looking for places to stop and eat, and that's when you see it. Off in the distance, you see 2 golden arches, and you know exactly what awaits you. The one and only McDonald's. Except whatever universe this is in, McDonald's only has 1 arch. Like hello, it's not Nick Donald's, it's Mick. So stop, okay? Or maybe someone messed up with the designing this restaurant, I don't know. Also, since when does McDonald's sell just bags of ice? Like look at the sign, bag of ice, $1. I mean it's a steal nonetheless, but still, that's odd on its own as well. In our 4th spot today we have the Ulfbert sword. Now this is something scientists like to call an out-of-place object, and that's because the sword dates back from around 800 to 1000 AD, which is shocking since they didn't have technology to make such swords back then. Swords like this were made 800 years later during the Industrial Revolution. Not only that, but its carbon content is 3 times higher than other swords of its time. It also suggested that in order to make this sword, iron ore had to have been heated to at least 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Again, they didn't have that technology to do that back then. So many people are perplexed. Well, there are a bunch of theories. One is that it was dropped by a time traveler, or 2, it might have come from a parallel universe. One that is far more advanced than ours. But let me know your theory in the comments below. In our 3rd spot today we have Lost and Found. A number of people on Reddit have shared stories in which they have lost something only for it to reappear in a place where it's impossible to. So let me explain. So one man said that he was with his cousin at Home Depot. Before they went in, the cousin grabbed his wallet, but he didn't have any pockets, so he asked the narrator if he could put his wallet inside his pocket so that he didn't have to carry it around. He agreed and he zipped it into his track pants. After shopping around at Home Depot for a bit, they went to check out, but his wallet wasn't in the track pants. So they retraced their steps thinking maybe it fell out, but nothing. So they decided just to go back to the car and return to the store later. When they got to the car, lo and behold, the wallet was on the dashboard. Which is wild because the cousin literally handed him the wallet and he zipped it into his pants. Now, one person believes that what happened was the universe glitched, and maybe in another reality, the man just left his wallet on the dashboard. Somehow, those universes merged, hence why the wallet was on the dash. Now, it's all confusing how this stuff works, but that's me explaining it the most basic way possible. In our 2nd spot, we have the little dino-looking figures. In 1944, thousands of little dino-looking figures were dug up in Mexico. Only problem is that the pieces date
back to 2500 BCE, a time when no dinosaurs were roaming around and people couldn't have possibly known about dinosaurs then. This is all according to scientists. So were there some other creatures that roamed the earth back then that we don't know of? Or is there a time traveling paleontologist out there? Imagine that, like Ross from Friends also being a time traveler. I love that. I don't know, or the object is from another universe. And in our number 1 spot today we have the ring. Now this next individual has a similar story to the Home Depot boys. So for her, she was washing the dishes one day when she heard a clink in her sink. Her ring that she took off when she was doing the dishes had slipped and fell into the sink and down the drain. Now it was just a cheap one, so she wasn't too concerned. It wasn't like her wedding ring. So she decided to just go on about her day. In the end, she forgot that the ring was even there. That was until a week later when she was putting on her shoes and felt something poking her toe. She emptied out her shoe and her ring clanked to the floor. So somehow, the ring went from being in her sink drain to in her shoe. Someone explain that to me. I don't know, maybe house elves are real.
Number 10. Virtual reality clones. Data is constantly being compiled on all of us. Every app you use or website you go to is keeping info on you. That means Uber knows where you like to go, Netflix knows what you like to watch, and Google knows all the weird porn you search, you sick freaks. So what could happen is all this data compiled on you could be saved and transferred into a program that would make a virtual version of you that's very similar to yourself. It could walk like you, talk like you, and even watch the same weird porn as you, you sick freak. This kind of scares me, but I think it's something people would want. Why would you mourn someone when you can build a virtual clone of them in a virtual space? You would never need to miss anybody. This also means that some companies would have the ability to recreate any person they want. They would know everything about that person and have a virtual clone of them. Everyone who works at this company would know that you're a sick freak. Number 9. Self-driving cars. If you work as a taxi or bus driver, I think it's maybe time to update your resume because this one seems right around the corner. We've already seen the initial steps of self-driving cars with companies like Tesla. As demand increases for these products, it's only a matter of time before technology becomes more affordable, and every company on the planet is making some version of a self-driving car, or as I like to call them, nap pods. I understand how this can be scary because some car company is going to know where you're going. They will be tracking you constantly. Also, these self-driving cars would have cameras on them, all over them. That means there's literally billions of cameras all over the world just watching people. Who's controlling that footage? And what if someone hacks your car and kills you for poops and giggles? But on the other hand, I really want a car that lets me eat pasta and fall asleep while I'm on my way to where I need to go. I guess you gotta crack a few eggs to make an omelet. Number 8. Robots. You know what's crazy about this one? It's like we know that the robots are coming to kill us, but we keep making them. You know, we can just stop making them. We already have Netflix and Uber Eats. Guys, we won. We don't need to make any more innovations. Well, I don't really know how much I need to say about this one, other than if I get the opportunity to sell out the human race and become a pet to one of our machine overlords, I'm taking that opportunity in a heartbeat. We already have robots now, but they're advancing more and more every day and becoming more powerful and getting better and better artificial intelligence. Some people speculate that we'll be able to create robots that have artificial intelligence as sophisticated as a human's by 2025. And all the big dogs are in on this. In 2014, Google purchased artificial intelligence company Deep Blue and has been working on AI that can teach itself to play video games and make art. So who wants to hit up Disneyland before we're all on fire? Number 7. Worldwide Wi-Fi. It's definitely coming. Having blazing fast internet anywhere with you. It doesn't matter if you're at home, you're underground, in the office, out with friends. It will always be with you. God, I sound like a deodorant commercial. I mean, it sounds great. We would never need to worry about download speeds, and we could turn binge watching TV shows into a national sport. But if this happens, we're gonna become so reliant on it that we will base our infrastructure all around this constant internet concept. So what happens if it goes down? What would people do if one day everything went from high speed to not a single drop of internet? I mean, the internet well became so dry that you couldn't even download Pong on your cheese grater Mac Pro. It would be utter chaos, the starting of the apocalypse. Everyone would be running around the streets like chickens with their heads cut off. You guys better start stockpiling your beans and Blu-rays now, just in case this pops off. Number 6. Subdermal identification chips. So what if everything you ever did was recorded on a little device? Every time you pooped, all the times you said you were gonna start getting in shape but you just sat on the toilet pooping, or when you told your friends you were late because of traffic but it was because you had a last minute massive poop that threw your schedule off. Well, a lot of people think that these future devices aren't that far away. They should have a lot of positive uses. If you have all your information in one place, it would make it super easy to see a doctor. Or you could be connected to your bank account and it would streamline paying for everything in your life. But think of how easy it would be to steal someone's identity. You could just knock them out, take the chip out, and then leave them in a ditch somewhere. Next thing you know, there's a much less handsome Che Dorena walking around making everyone think I'm less handsome. Number 5. Exoskeletons. You've probably seen these ones in movies like Elysium or The Matrix Reloaded, where people walk around in super cool exoskeletons being all strong and junk. Well, various militaries around the world have been working on this kind of tech, so it's not that far into the future before we're gonna start seeing these things implemented in our daily lives. You won't need to worry about throwing your back out working your warehouse job because you're going to be wearing some crazy robo suit that helps you lift 10,000 pounds. The scary thing about this is that one day some dude who dropped out of high school who's working in a warehouse is going to have access to tech that almost makes him a superhero. There's going to be endless videos of Kyles hopped up on too much Monster Energy smashing stuff on their smoke breaks. Number 4. Super Kids. No, this one isn't a cheesy spin-off of the Super Friends show, but in the future we'll probably see a generation of super kids. If you decide to have a baby, instead of hoping that it bakes right, you'll be able to pay someone to put all the pieces exactly where you want them. You'll be able to genetically modify your kid in the womb. Give it all the upgrades you want. We're gonna have babies that look like they can bend metal over their abs before they even do their first chin-up. I don't know if I'm ever gonna have kids, but if I do, I'm definitely gonna give them whatever gene lets them dunk. Number 3. 3D printers. Some of you are probably out there like, but Che, we already have 3D printers. Those aren't from the future, those are from right now. Well, I'm talking about 3D printers from the future. Right now the tech is very crude. You can only make so much. But in the future, we might be able to print all sorts of stuff. From full functioning PlayStations to, I don't know, a human heart? Yeah, some people think that we'll be able to print organs in the future. We could print entire people. Then all of you plebs out there finally don't have an excuse for not being able to get a girlfriend. You can just make one. Number 2. Free thinking artificial intelligence. So we already have small forms of AI, things that can perform some sort of boring repetitive task like identifying patterns or organizing data. But what about when all this stuff starts thinking on its own? Now everyone thinks it's going to kill us. It'll probably be like Skynet but way less sexy than 80s Arnold. But in reality, we have no idea what a free thinking AI would want. It has no need to eat or reproduce, it has no sex drive, none of the driving factors that make humans do any of the things we do. So it's really our ego showing when we try to predict an AI's motivation. This thing would literally be a god and its desires would be far beyond our understanding. So I'm just hoping he's cool and he wants to chill and hang out and stuff. Number 1, the transcendence. So if number 2 happens, there might be an opportunity for all of us to partake in the transcendence, where we leave our bodies and meld our consciousness with an all-powerful AI. All our minds connected in one giant hive. All of our thoughts would be shared with billions and everyone would be part of one being. That would mean all your weird perverted thoughts would be open to everyone like a library, you sick freaks.
Number 10, the Earth's core. I know we all want to get into some creepy spooky stuff, but let's start with a little mini science lesson. The Earth's crust is the second highest layer of the Earth, only being underneath the sea level. Then we have the mantle and the cores, which are incredibly hot and we really can't explore because, well, our machinery would likely just melt. The core is the very center of the Earth and the
hottest, around 5,200 degrees Celsius, and here's where it gets weird. Scientists discovered that the core of the Earth is actually asymmetrical. They discovered that seismic waves caused by earthquakes travel faster through the core going north and south than they do going east and west. This causes the iron that solidifies on the sides of the core to grow more on one side and leaving the core lopsided. Scientists actually have no idea why this is happening, though I think it's because there's an ancient colony of dinosaurs living down there, or something. I think I saw a documentary on it once. Number 9. The Devil's Claw. In the 1980s, a group of explorers took to New Zealand to look underneath the mountain. What they found was probably something that they never would have expected. Eventually they came upon pieces of bones, attached to flesh, attached to what looked like a dinosaur's claw. It had 3 long fingers, each with their own long pointed claw forming an entire hand. But like most dinosaur bones, this one didn't look like it had been dead for centuries, instead looking like it had only died very recently. The whole team was now stuck in this deep dark cave under a mountain, surrounded by remains of what appeared to be some sort of modern dinosaur or monster. Some people that have seen the hand say that it reminds them of the devil, and looks like it is his hand that somehow appeared in the ground of New Zealand. Others believing it to come from an ancient bird that used to roam there. Number 8. The Betz Mystery Sphere. The so-called Betz Mystery Sphere was found in the 70s and is exactly as its name suggests, a sphere, being completely smooth except for a triangular symbol. When they found it, they thought it was space junk and they picked it up and took it home. But then they noticed it had some strange properties, like seeming to hum and resonate with certain noises like guitar playing. They also realized that when rolled, it would change directions on its own and often return back to where it had started. When this was discovered, the Betz family were swarmed by media wanting to get a look at the Mystery Sphere. Many people witnessing the sphere's strange activities and the way it would completely change directions in no time at all with no outside influence. To this day, it's not known what the Betz Mystery Sphere actually was. It's still a mystery, some people citing it as some sort of alien orb. Unfortunately, we probably never will get a true answer as the current whereabouts of the sphere are unknown. Number 7. Prosthetics. Archaeologists are no strangers to digging up weird bodies and burial sites, but this one seemed especially strange. In the north of Italy, they found a body, among others, that seemed to come from the 6th to 8th century. Obviously, this alone isn't weird, they find bodies all the time. What was weird is that the man had an amputated hand, and he had a knife as his prosthetic. Within the grave, they also found the skeleton of a headless horse and several greyhound dogs. Upon examining the man, they found that his body was an incredible story of survival for a person who had received an amputation before proper medical practices and antibiotics existed. They knew that the knife was a prosthetic and not just something he'd been buried with because the arm and knife both showed the signs of having been attached for a long time. Personally, I think this guy was probably the inspiration for Merle Dixon on The Walking Dead. Number 6. The Black Sarcophagus. Around 4 years ago, a meme went around the internet about drinking the sarcophagus juice. So where did that come from? The juice came from the Black Sarcophagus. In summer of 2018, they found a massive black granite sarcophagus buried deep in Egypt, untouched for around 2,000 years. Many people believed that the sarcophagus would contain some deadly curse and that we should not open it. But they did open it and they found, well, juice. It contained 3 skeletons and a red-brown sewage-like liquid, apparently giving off a completely unbearable stench. It was so bad that when they first opened it only 2 inches, everyone vacated the premises. So did the tomb have a curse in it? Well, one of the archaeologists said the following: "We've opened it and thank God the world has not fallen into darkness." Well, I think he may have said that a bit prematurely. With the state of the world today, we may want to go back and consider that maybe it was the sarcophagus juice that cursed us. Number 5. Williams Enigmalith. In the late 1990s, an electrical engineer called John J. Williams was on a hike when he saw a strange rock sticking out of the ground. How it would have looked different from any other rock on a hike, I'm not sure, but he proceeded to dig it up, and he found that it was in fact very strange. That's because it appeared to have a metal piece attached to it, resembling the male end of an electrical plug. It became known as the Williams Enigmalith. Enigmalith being a combination of the words enigma and monolith. He consulted both an engineer and a geologist to take a look at the rock, and they revealed that the electrical component within the granite showed no sign of ever having been glued or welded. The rock itself looking to be around 100,000 years old. Williams has apparently encouraged scientists to examine the rock, but none have ever stepped up to do so. Maybe because they don't want us to know the truth about it. Number 4. Alien skulls. If you've seen Indiana Jones, then you're probably familiar with the concept of the crystal skulls. Skulls with elongated heads that are going to be used to somehow conquer the world or something. Well, it turns out that these skulls aren't just a work of fiction, and if you sat around watching History Channel with your dad as a kid, then you may have seen the special they did about the search for the real crystal skulls. Well, in a Mexican graveyard, researchers found a total of 25 skulls, 13 of them having these long-headed malformations. When you look at pictures of them, they definitely look like they must be something alien, coming from another planet. Researchers, however, believe that this comes from a cultural practice of stretching the skull, as it was maybe a sign of higher social status. Personally, I'm gonna keep believing it was aliens. So far, no real confirmed crystal skulls have actually been found, but maybe someday they will. Number 3. Antikythera mechanism. In the early 1900s, this 2,000-year-old artifact was found off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera. It is shaped like a circular gear with other mechanisms seeming to attach to it. Scientists have been trying for decades to try and figure out what this is and what it could have possibly been used for around 2,000 years ago, some describing it to be the first ever computer. While it may not look like a work of art to you, a professor at Cardiff University said it was extraordinary, describing how everything was perfect and seemed to be done very carefully, even going so far as to compare it to the Mona Lisa. Upon close study, it seems to track the solar system, like the time of day as well as even eclipses. It's the most complex piece of machinery from its era, and nothing similar came around for a very long time. Some people bringing into question the idea that humans had some sort of outside influence to help build this computer. Number 2. The Voynich manuscript. If you're a fan of rare books, then this one is for you. The Voynich manuscript was rediscovered in the early 1900s, though it had previously circulated through the hands of emperors and rulers. To this day, we don't actually know what the book says, as it is written in an indecipherable language and its illustrations are just as confusing. The pictures include things like otherworldly plants, non-existent constellations, and naked women swimming through strange tubes and green baths. Almost every page includes these fantastical drawings and strange texts about things that seem like they must come from another world. The book was written back in the 15th to 16th century, and perhaps the person who wrote it had a window to another planet, or perhaps a parallel universe. Copies of the manuscript are now available to purchase, along with historical and scientific perspectives on the book, if you're interested in taking a look for yourself. Number 1. Vampire skeletons. Vampire imagery and stories have been around for centuries, even spanning all the way back to the Bible if you saw my other video on that. But as it stands, we don't really have any true evidence or proof of the existence of vampires, unless you think the Twilight series was a documentary. In Poland, one team excavated a group of bodies that seemed to date back to the 14th century. Again, not super weird, their job is basically finding bodies. But what was different about these ones is that they appear to have been taken apart after their death, not by grave robbers or site disturbers, but immediately after they had died and were being buried. They had their heads removed and had been punctured through the spine, their heads being held under large stones. Researchers believe that this is due to the fear of vampires, and the people burying them believed them to be blood-sucking monsters and buried them this way to prevent them from ever rising up again. Well, I guess it worked.